What makes Star Wars so endlessly captivating is not merely the lightsabers or the epic space battles. It is the mysteries that lie beneath the surface. For decades, fans have questioned, theorized, and pieced together the hidden meanings behind this beloved universe. Every shadow in the Star Wars saga holds the potential for revelation. Every unanswered question becomes an invitation to imagine beyond what we see on screen. The stars themselves seem to lean closer when we ponder the nature of these theories. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world sleeps, minds wander through corridors of what-if scenarios. The Force, that mysterious energy field binding all things, becomes a canvas for our collective imagination. We find ourselves drawn to the spaces between the frames, the moments left unexplained. The galaxy far, far away breathes with a life that extends far beyond the films. Each theory adds another layer to the rich tapestry of this universe. The boundaries between what is canon and what is fan interpretation blur like the edges of a nebula. In this twilight zone of possibility, new stories emerge and old ones transform. The wind carries echoes of conversations had in convention halls and online forums. Voices rise and fall like tides as fans debate the meaning behind subtle clues. The texture of speculation is rough yet comforting. Like well-worn pages of a favorite book, we trace our fingers over the contours of plot holes and inconsistencies. Each discovery feels like finding a hidden passage in an ancient temple. The scent of possibility hangs thick in the air, intoxicating and mysterious. Our hearts beat faster when we uncover connections that others have missed. The thrill of the chase becomes as important as the answers themselves. The darkness between stars holds countless theories waiting to be explored. Some theories are born from careful observation, others from wild imagination. Each one, whether plausible or absurd, contributes to the greater conversation. The community of fans becomes a living organism, sharing and evolving ideas together. Like constellations forming patterns in the night sky, theories connect disparate elements into coherent pictures. The weight of evidence sometimes bends under the pressure of wishful thinking. Yet even the most outlandish theories contain kernels of truth that resonate with us. The dance between fact and fiction becomes a beautiful, mesmerizing spectacle. The silence of deep space mirrors the contemplative nature of theory crafting. In these quiet moments of reflection, we discover new aspects of stories we thought we knew. The fabric of the Star Wars universe stretches and expands with each new interpretation. What began as a simple space opera has grown into a complex mythology. The roots of these theories dig deep into the soil of human psychology and storytelling. We see ourselves reflected in the characters and their struggles. The mysteries become mirrors, showing us our own desires and fears. The galaxy far, far away becomes a lens through which we examine our own world. The light of distant stars guides us through the labyrinth of possibilities. Some theories shine brightly with compelling evidence and logical consistency. Others flicker like dying embers, barely sustaining themselves against scrutiny. The spectrum of theories ranges from the scholarly to the sensational. Each one adds color and dimension to our understanding of the saga. The texture of these ideas varies from the rough-hewn to the polished. Some feel like they were always there waiting to be discovered. Others seem to emerge fully formed from the collective unconscious. The rhythm of speculation beats like a heart within the fan community. Pulse after pulse, new theories emerge and old ones are re-examined. The circulation of ideas keeps the universe alive and evolving. Even years after the films were released, the conversation continues to flow. The current of discussion carries us to unexpected shores of understanding. We find ourselves swept away by the tide of collective imagination. The ebb and flow of debate creates a dynamic ecosystem of ideas. In this ocean of possibility, every fan becomes an explorer. The mist of uncertainty surrounds even the most accepted interpretations. What we think we know often dissolves under closer examination. The fog of mystery lifts just enough to reveal new questions. Each answer becomes a doorway to 10 more mysteries. The landscape of Star Wars lore shifts and changes with each new revelation. Mountains of evidence rise from plains of speculation. Valleys of doubt separate peaks of certainty. The terrain of theory crafting is as varied and complex as the galaxy itself. The warmth of community envelops those who venture into these theoretical waters. We find companionship in shared curiosity and wonder. The fire of passion burns brightly in those who love these stories. Gathering around this communal flame, we share our insights and discoveries. The heat of debate tempers our ideas, making them stronger. The light of understanding dawns gradually, illuminating new paths. The shadows of ignorance retreat, step by step. Yet always, just beyond the reach of our understanding, new mysteries await. The chill of the unknown sends shivers down our spines. Some theories touch upon truths so profound, they unsettle us. The cold reality of what might be hidden beneath the surface gives us pause. Frost forms on the edges of our comfortable assumptions. Winter comes to our understanding, stripping away familiar growth. In this season of doubt, new possibilities take root. The frozen landscape of what we thought we knew begins to thaw. Spring will come, bringing new life to our comprehension. The texture of time itself seems to change when we engage with these theories. Hours pass like minutes as we dive deeper into the mysteries. The fabric of reality stretches thin between what is and what could be. We feel the rough edges of unresolved questions against our skin. The smooth surface of accepted truth sometimes cracks under pressure. The grain of the narrative runs in unexpected directions. We run our fingers along the warp and weft of storytelling. The tapestry of Star Wars reveals new patterns with each examination. The sound of distant battle echoes through the chambers of our imagination. Lightsabers clash in the theaters of our minds as we debate competing theories. The hum of the Force becomes a soundtrack to our contemplation. Whispers of conspiracy float on the breeze of speculation. The roar of starship engines accompanies our journey through these ideas. The silence of space provides the backdrop for our inner dialogues. The symphony of Star Wars plays on, with theories as new movements. Each theory adds its own unique voice to the chorus. The taste of possibility lingers on our tongues like exotic spices. Some theories are sweet with the promise of revelation. Others are bitter with the complexity of their implications. The savory richness of well-supported theories satisfies our intellectual hunger. The sharp tang of controversy adds excitement to the mix. We savor each new insight like a fine meal. The aftertaste of discovery remains long after the initial consumption. Our palates become more sophisticated with each new theory we encounter. The weight of history presses upon us as we consider these theories. The gravity of what might have been pulls at our understanding. The mass of accumulated lore creates its own field of influence. We feel the pressure of decades of fan speculation and analysis. The density of information sometimes threatens to overwhelm us. Yet we continue to mine these rich veins of possibility. The ore of truth gleams within the rock of uncertainty. We chip away at the surface, hoping to reveal the treasure within. The light of dawn breaks on the horizon of our understanding. New possibilities emerge from the darkness of the unknown. The first rays of illumination reveal contours we had not previously seen. The warmth of comprehension begins to spread through our minds. Shadows retreat, but never completely disappear. The landscape of theory reveals itself in the morning light. We see both the beauty and the imperfections of our idea. The day of understanding has just begun. But before we dive into the most controversial theory of all, we must first understand how a simple children's story became a universe of infinite possibilities. Let's move on to the first Star Wars theory, the Darth Jar Jar theory. In the shadows of political maneuvering, the most unlikely figure may have been pulling the strings. The Senate chambers of Coruscant echoed with whispers of change as the Republic crumbled from within. Yet, few noticed the clumsy Gungan whose every stumble seemed to alter the course of galactic history. Jar Jar Binks moved through the halls of power like a phantom wrapped in buffoonery. His elongated ears twitched at conversations he should not have understood. His wide eyes appeared vacant, yet missed nothing of importance. The very air around him seemed to bend and warp with unnatural precision. Those who dismissed him as a fool would soon learn the price of underestimation. But planet Naboo breathed with ancient magic, its swamps holding secrets older than the Republic itself. In these mist-shrouded waters, Jar Jar was first introduced to the galaxy as an outcast. His people, the Gungans, had banished him for his legendary clumsiness. Or so the official story went. The truth, like the murky depths of Otoh Gunga, remained obscured from view. Jar Jar's exile seemed too convenient, too perfectly timed, as if the universe itself had positioned him exactly where he needed to be. The swamp waters whispered of manipulation and design. The rain fell softly on the Naboo plains as two Jedi stumbled upon this strange creature. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, guardians of peace and justice, found themselves entangled with Jar Jar's fate. The Gungan's apparent panic seemed genuine, his flailing limbs suggesting terror. Yet something beneath the surface felt calculated, rehearsed. His every movement, while seemingly random, served a purpose, leading the Jedi exactly where they needed to go. The storm above mirrored the turmoil below, as destinies intertwined. None could have guessed how this chance meeting would reshape the galaxy. The Gungan city of Otoh Gunga shimmered beneath the waves, its bubble-like structures glowing with soft light. Here Jar Jar faced his people, his punishment for past transgressions. The Boss Nass, ruler of the Gungans, seemed to bend too easily to Jar Jar's pleas, as if influenced by powers beyond normal understanding. The water around them pulsed with unseen energy. Jar Jar's words, though seemingly foolish, carried weight they should not have possessed. The very currents responded to his presence. Something ancient and powerful stirred beneath his comical exterior. The battle for Naboo raged across planet and space, a symphony of destruction and hope. Jar Jar found himself inexplicably placed in command of the Gungan army. His bumbling orders somehow resulted in perfect tactical maneuvers. The droid army fell before forces that should have been easily crushed. Each accidental victory seemed too precise, too perfectly timed. The smoke of battle cleared to reveal a hero where none should have existed. The Gungans celebrated their unlikely savior. None questioned how a creature of such incompetence could achieve such success. The years passed like sand through an hourglass, each grain marking Jar Jar's ascent. From exile to hero, from hero to representative, the people of Naboo, grateful for his role in their liberation, embraced him as one of their own. Senator Padme Amidala saw in him a symbol of unity between human and Gungan. She could not have known how this decision would echo through history. Jar Jar's presence in the Senate seemed innocent enough, a gesture of peace and reconciliation. Yet the foundations of the Republic trembled with each step he took toward power. The Senate chamber itself seemed to lean in when Jar Jar spoke, though few took his words seriously. His broken basic, his flailing gestures, his apparent confusion, all served as perfect camouflage for something far more dangerous. The ancient stones of the Senate building absorbed his presence. The very air grew thick with manipulation. Senators who laughed at his foolishness would soon weep at their blindness. The Republic's death knell sounded in the form of a Gungan's voice. History would remember the laughter, but not the warning it contained. The controversy surrounding this theory burns like a dark star in the fan community. Many dismiss it as absurd, impossible, ridiculous beyond belief. Yet the evidence, when examined closely, tells a different story. Jar Jar's physical abilities defy normal explanation. His movements, while appearing clumsy, demonstrate impossible precision. The Force itself seems to bend around him. His survival in situations that should have meant certain death suggests something more. The universe itself appears to conspire in his favor. The underwater chase through Naboo's core revealed Jar Jar's true nature to those with eyes to see. As monstrous creatures pursued their submarine, Jar Jar seemed to pass out in terror. Yet at the precise moment of greatest danger, a larger beast appeared, one that should not have been there, acting in ways that defied natural behavior. Jar Jar awoke as if from a dream, smacking his lips casually. The timing was too perfect, the coordination too exact. The political landscape of the Republic shifted like tectonic plates beneath Jar Jar's influence. Each stumble, each apparent mistake, led to greater power and influence. The Chancellor's office became his playground, though none recognized the game. Senators who opposed Palpatine found themselves undermined by Jar Jar's innocent actions. The very machinery of government seemed to respond to his presence. Like iron filings drawn to a magnet, events aligned around his path. The Republic's fate hung by threads only he could see, and he pulled those threads with the precision of a master puppeteer. The origins of this theory emerged from the collective unconscious of the fan community. Like whispers in the dark, it began as a joke, a meme, something absurd. Yet as more evidence accumulated, the joke began to feel disturbingly real. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed impossible movements and knowing glances. The very language George Lucas had spoken about hidden meanings and layers. The fans had stumbled upon something the creator had carefully concealed, a truth so outrageous it could only be hidden in plain sight. The theory grew from speculation to conviction in the hearts of many. The physical evidence continued to mount, each detail more damning than the last. Jar Jar's hands moved with impossible grace when no one was watching. His eyes, when captured in close-up, held depths of understanding that contradicted his words. The very sound of his voice, when analyzed, revealed patterns beneath the apparent nonsense. Like a code hidden within a child's nursery rhyme, the Force signatures around him pulsed with dark energy when he thought himself unobserved. The air grew cold in his presence, though none could say why. Something ancient and powerful wore the skin of a fool. The wind howled through the empty Senate chambers after the vote. Ghosts of democracy whispered warnings to those who would listen. Jar Jar walked through those halls alone, his footsteps echoing with purpose. The comical exterior had served its function perfectly. No one suspected the mastermind behind the mask of foolishness. The greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the galaxy he was a clumsy Gungan. History would record the rise of the Empire, but miss its true author. The shadows themselves seemed to bow in his presence. The storm clouds gathered over the galaxy as Jar Jar's work neared completion. Each raindrop that fell represented a world enslaved, a dream destroyed. The thunder that rumbled across Coruscant was the sound of chains being forged, and in the eye of this hurricane of change stood the most unlikely figure. Jar Jar Binks, the fool, the clown, the accidental hero. His true nature remained hidden behind a veil of apparent incompetence, the perfect disguise for the perfect crime. The galaxy had been conquered without ever realizing it was at war. But what if Jar Jar's clumsiness was not incompetence, but rather the perfect disguise for something far more sinister? Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, the Darth Jar Jar theory, Part 2. The Senate chamber echoed with fateful words spoken by a creature everyone underestimated. The marble floors of the Great Hall seemed to absorb the weight of history. As Jar Jar Binks approached the podium, thousands of senators watched, some with amusement, others with barely concealed contempt. None could have predicted that this moment would mark the beginning of the end for the Republic. The air itself grew thick with anticipation as the Gungan representative cleared his throat. His long fingers trembled slightly, though whether from nerves or theatrical effect remained unclear. The very foundations of democracy trembled as he prepared to speak. In that moment, the fate of trillions hung in the balance. The words that followed would be analyzed for generations to come, each syllable dripping with calculated innocence. Jar Jar's broken, basic flowed like a river of apparent confusion, yet carried precise meaning beneath the surface. In response to the direct threat to the Republic, he began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. The senators leaned forward, some expecting entertainment, others actual substance. I propose that the Supreme Chancellor be given emergency powers, vice. The gasp that rippled through the assembly was audible even in the highest balconies. Democracy itself seemed to hold its breath. The wheels of tyranny had been set in motion by the most unlikely of hands. The timing of this proposal defied coincidence, arriving precisely when Palpatine needed it most. The separatist crisis had reached its peak. Systems were seceding daily. Chaos reigned across the galaxy. Jar Jar, who should have been hiding from such complex political maneuvering, stepped into the spotlight. His apparent lack of understanding made him the perfect messenger for Palpatine's power grab. No one could accuse him of malice when he seemed incapable of grasping the consequences. The Senate chamber darkened as storm clouds gathered outside the massive windows. Nature itself seemed to mourn the death of freedom. The rain that began to fall was the tears of 1,000 worlds. The precision of Jar Jar's political maneuvering suggested something far beyond his apparent capabilities. Each step of his rise to power had been carefully calculated, each stumble perfectly placed. From his first meeting with the Jedi to his current position in the Senate, nothing had been left to chance. The very Force itself seemed to bend around his will, though few could perceive it. His survival in situations that should have meant certain death spoke of supernatural intervention. The battle droids that somehow missed him, the explosions that always found cover, each near-death experience had strengthened his position rather than ended it. The universe itself conspired to keep this fool alive and influential. The physical abilities displayed by Jar Jar throughout his journey defied normal explanation. His movements, while appearing clumsy, demonstrated impossible grace and precision. The underwater chase through Naboo's planetary core revealed capabilities no Gungan should possess. As the submarine fled from monstrous creatures, Jar Jar seemed to pass out at the perfect moment. Yet his timing was too exact, his recovery too convenient. The larger beast that appeared to save them behaved unnaturally, as if controlled by an unseen hand. Jar Jar awoke smacking his lips, as if from a pleasant dream rather than terror. The water around them seemed to respond to his presence, parting like the Red Sea. The theory connecting Jar Jar to Darth Plagueis grows more compelling with each examination. Plagueis, the Sith Lord who could manipulate life itself, mentioned by Palpatine in his story to Anakin. What if Jar Jar was not just a Sith Lord but Plagueis himself, having faked his death? The moon species to which Plagueis belonged were known for their height and elongated features. Jar Jar's own elongated limbs and unusual physiology could be a disguise rather than his true form. The Force abilities attributed to Plagueis matched perfectly with Jar Jar's impossible survival skills. Each death-defying moment could be explained by mastery over life and death. The very air around Jar Jar seemed to hum with dark energy when he thought himself unobserved. The evidence of Sith-like manipulation throughout the prequels becomes undeniable when viewed through this lens. Jar Jar's hand gestures, while appearing random, mirrored those of Force users. His influence over Boss Nace and the Gungan leadership defied normal political explanation. The way he moved through battlefields unscathed suggested supernatural protection. His ability to be exactly where he needed to be, when he needed to be there, spoke of foresight. The Jedi, blinded by their arrogance, never sensed the dark power radiating from this fool. Their focus on Palpatine allowed the true mastermind to operate in plain sight. The greatest trick the Sith ever played was hiding behind a mask of buffoonery. The Senate vote that granted Palpatine emergency powers marked the culmination of Jar Jar's master plan. Each senator who raised their hand in support did so at the Gungan's subtle prompting. The applause that followed was the sound of democracy's death knell. Jar Jar stood there, seemingly proud of his contribution to the Republic's salvation. Yet beneath the surface, a dark satisfaction radiated from his very being. The marble pillars of the Senate chamber seemed to bow in his presence. The ghosts of 1,000 years of democratic tradition wept silently. None realized they had just handed the galaxy to the Sith on a silver platter. The aftermath of this fateful decision rippled through the galaxy like a dark wave. Systems that had resisted Imperial influence suddenly found themselves isolated. The Jedi Order, already weakened by the war, now faced a chancellor with unlimited power. Jar Jar watched from the shadows as his plan unfolded perfectly. His apparent confusion and innocence served as the perfect cover for his machinations. The very Force itself seemed to respond to his will, bending reality to his desires. Each step toward empire had been carefully orchestrated by this unlikely architect. The galaxy danced to a tune only he could hear. The physical transformation some theorists propose is both fascinating and terrifying. What if Jar Jar's appearance was merely a disguise, a Force illusion maintained for decades? The true form beneath could be that of Darth Plagueis, having survived his apparent death. The moon features hidden by layers of dark side manipulation and deception. Each clumsy movement could be a calculated effort to maintain the illusion. Each seemingly innocent phrase could carry hidden meaning for those who knew how to listen. The very air around Jar Jar sometimes seemed to shimmer, as if struggling to maintain the deception. Those rare moments when his composure slipped revealed eyes of ancient wisdom and power. The connection between Jar Jar and Palpatine runs deeper than mere political alliance. Their relationship suggests that of master and apprentice, though who holds which role remains unclear. Palpatine's deference to Jar Jar in their early interactions takes on new meaning in this light. The Sith Lord of the generation teaching his successor the art of manipulation. Each public humiliation of Jar Jar could have been a lesson in patience and deception. The very structure of their relationship mirrors the Sith rule of two, one to embody power, the other to crave it. Yet, which was which in this deadly dance? The evidence from the films themselves supports this theory when viewed frame by frame. Jar Jar's hand movements often mirror those of known Force users. His eyes occasionally flash with understanding that contradicts his apparent confusion. The very timing of his interventions suggests foresight beyond normal capability. Each accidental victory in battle demonstrates tactical genius disguised as luck. The Force signatures around him pulse with dark energy when captured in slow motion. The air grows cold in his presence, though none can say why. Something ancient and powerful wears the skin of a fool. The night that followed the Senate vote was the longest in galactic history. Stars seemed to dim, as if mourning the death of freedom. The city planet of Coruscant appeared to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Jar Jar walked through the empty Senate chambers, his footsteps echoing with purpose. The comical exterior had served its function perfectly. No one suspected the mastermind behind the mask of foolishness. The greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the galaxy he was a clumsy Gungan. History would record the rise of the Empire, but miss its true author. The storm that gathered over Coruscant in the following days mirrored the turmoil within the Force itself. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the transformation already underway. Each thunderclap was the sound of another world falling under Imperial control. The rain that fell was the tears of a billion souls who sensed the coming darkness. And at the center of this maelstrom stood the most unlikely figure, Jar Jar Binks, the fool, the clown, the accidental hero. His true nature remained hidden behind a veil of apparent incompetence, the perfect disguise for the perfect crime. The evidence continues to mount as scholars and fans re-examine the prequel trilogy through this lens. Each scene with Jar Jar reveals new layers of meaning and manipulation. The very language he speaks, while seeming broken, carries hidden messages, like a code hidden within a child's nursery rhyme. The Force itself seems to bend around his will, though few can perceive it. The Jedi, blinded by their own certainty, never sensed the darkness in their midst. Their focus on the obvious threat allowed the true danger to flourish in plain sight. The galaxy had been conquered without ever realizing it was at war. Yet even as we ponder Jar Jar's true nature, another theory emerges that suggests the dark side's influence began much earlier. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, Palpatine's master plan, Anakin's birth. In the depths of the Force, a child was born without father, created by the will of the dark side. The desert winds of Tatooine howled around a small moisture farm as Shmi Skywalker gave birth to a child who should not have existed. The twin suns beat down on the sand outside, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with unnatural life. In that moment, the very fabric of the Force trembled with the magnitude of what had occurred. A child conceived by the midi-chlorians themselves, brought into existence through powers beyond mortal understanding. The air in the birthing chamber crackled with energy, as if lightning had been captured in human form. Shmi's hands trembled as she held the infant, sensing immediately that this child was different. The stars themselves seemed to lean closer, witnessing the birth of a legend. The prophecy of the Chosen One had echoed through Jedi temples for 1,000 generations. Ancient texts spoke of one who would bring balance to the Force, though none could agree on what that meant. The Jedi Council had grown complacent in their power, blind to the darkness gathering at the edges of the galaxy. Their meditation chambers echoed with whispers of change, yet they failed to recognize the signs. The very air in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant had grown thick with the weight of their own certainty. Masters sat in council, vaguing interpretations while the galaxy slipped further into chaos. The marble floors of their sacred space seemed to absorb their arrogance, storing it like poison. None could have predicted that the Chosen One would be born not to Jedi, but to a slave on a forgotten world. Palpatine's story about Darth Plagueis the Wise took on new meaning in light of this theory. The Sith Lord who could influence the midi-chlorians to create life, who could keep those he cared about from dying. What if this was not merely a story to tempt Anakin, but a confession of Palpatine's own actions? The Chancellor's office seemed to darken as he spoke these words to the young Jedi. The very Force around them recoiled from the truth hidden in plain sight. Palpatine's eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge as he described his former master's powers. The rain that lashed against the windows mirrored the storm of revelation brewing in Anakin's mind. Each word was carefully chosen, each pause perfectly timed to plant seeds of doubt. The possibility that Palpatine orchestrated Anakin's conception changes everything we thought we knew. The Sith, working from the shadows, creating their own destruction through the one destined to defeat them. The irony was so perfect it could only have been designed by the dark side itself. Palpatine's manipulations extended not just to events but to the very fabric of life in the galaxy. How this theory changes our understanding of Anakin's destiny cannot be overstated. The Chosen One was not meant to destroy the Sith, but to fulfill their ultimate purpose. Balance was brought to the Force not by eliminating the dark side, but by embracing it. Anakin's journey from light to dark and back again took on new meaning in this context. Each moment of his life, each choice he made, served a greater purpose he could not comprehend. The very air around him seemed to hum with the weight of his destiny. The Force guided his steps even as it seemed to abandon him. The prophecy was fulfilled, not in spite of his fall but because of it. The connection to midi-chlorians and their true nature becomes central to this theory. These microscopic beings, introduced in the prequel trilogy, were more than just biological indicators. They were the bridge between the physical world and the Force itself. Palpatine, through his mastery of the dark side, learned to manipulate them directly. The very building blocks of life became his tools for shaping galactic events. The blood that flowed through Anakin's veins contained a higher concentration than any Jedi had ever seen. This was not an accident of nature, but a deliberate act of creation. The midi-chlorians themselves seemed to sing with dark purpose in his presence. Spee, the desert planet of Tatooine, took on new significance as the birthplace of this grand deception. Its harsh landscape, its twin suns, its position at the edge of known space. All of these elements made it the perfect hiding place for Palpatine's greatest creation. The sand that covered the planet seemed to whisper secrets to those who would listen. The wind that howled across the dunes carried echoes of dark rituals performed in secret. The very air of Tatooine tasted different, charged with the energy of unnatural birth. The slaves who worked the land felt it in their bones, though they could not name it. Something had been born among them that would change the galaxy forever. Shmi Skywalker's role in this cosmic drama becomes both tragic and profound. She carried a child she did not conceive, gave birth to a destiny she could not comprehend. The love she felt for Anakin was real, even as his origins were artificial. Her hands, rough from years of slavery, cradled the galaxy's future without knowing it. The tears she shed were not just for her own suffering, but for the pain her son would endure. The very Force seemed to mourn her innocence as it was violated by dark design. Her simple faith in the goodness of the universe would be tested beyond imagining. The desert winds carried her prayers to stars that had already turned away. The Jedi Order's failure to sense the truth about Anakin's origins speaks to their own blindness. Their arrogance had made them unable to perceive the darkness growing in their midst. The meditation chambers where they sought enlightenment had become echo chambers of their own certainty. The very crystals that powered their lightsabers seemed to dim as their connection to the Force weakened. Masters who could move starships with their minds could not see the truth before their eyes. The ancient texts they studied contained warnings they chose to ignore. The Force itself tried to communicate with them, but they had forgotten how to listen. Their temple, once a beacon of light, had become a monument to their own pride. The timing of Anakin's birth was no accident in this grand manipulation. Palpatine had been planning his rise to power for decades, perhaps centuries. The Sith had waited in the shadows, biding their time, preparing for the perfect moment. The Republic had grown corrupt, the Jedi complacent, the galaxy ripe for change. Each star that burned in the sky was a witness to this patient conspiracy. The very fabric of space seemed to stretch with the weight of anticipation. The Force itself held its breath as the pieces of this cosmic game moved into position. Anakin's birth was not the beginning of the story, but the culmination of 1,000 years of planning. The evidence supporting this theory can be found throughout the prequel trilogy for those who know where to look. Palpatine's unusual interest in Anakin from their first meeting suggests prior knowledge. The Chancellor's guidance of the young Jedi took on a darker meaning in this context. Each piece of advice, each moment of encouragement, served a greater purpose. The very air around Palpatine seemed to crackle with dark energy when Anakin was near. The Sith Lord had not just found the Chosen One, he had created him. The prophecy was not a warning, but a blueprint for galactic domination. The Jedi had walked willingly into a trap, centuries in the making. The tragedy of Anakin Skywalker takes on new dimensions when viewed through this lens. He was not merely a victim of circumstance, but a puppet in a cosmic drama. Every choice he made, every step he took, had been anticipated by his creator. The very Force that flowed through him had been manipulated from before his birth. His fall to the dark side was not a failure, but a fulfillment of his true purpose. The tears he shed were not just for his own pain, but for a destiny he could not escape. The red lightsaber he wielded was not just a weapon, but a symbol of his design nature. The mask he wore as Vader was not just armor, but the revelation of his true face. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as this grand deception unfolded. Stars burned brighter, as if trying to illuminate the truth hidden in darkness. Planets aligned in patterns that spoke of ancient prophecies being fulfilled. The very fabric of space seemed to ripple with the magnitude of what was occurring. Nebulae swirled with colors that had not been seen since the dawn of time. Black holes seemed to pulse with anticipation, waiting to consume the result. Comets streaked across the sky like tears shed by the universe itself. The Force, that energy field that binds all things, trembled with the weight of revelation. But if Anakin was truly created by the Sith, then the Jedi's greatest hope was actually their greatest enemy's ultimate weapon. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, the Chosen One prophecy re-examined. Ancient words spoken in forgotten temples held the key to the galaxy's fate. The stone walls of Jedi temples across the galaxy echoed with prophecies, whispered by Force ghosts, long departed. These sacred texts, written in languages older than the Republic itself, spoke of one who would bring balance to the Force. The air in these meditation chambers grew thick with the weight of centuries of contemplation. Masters had meditated on these words, seeking understanding that remained just beyond their grasp. The very crystals that powered their lightsabers seemed to hum with the mystery of this ancient promise. Each generation of Jedi had interpreted the prophecy differently, adding layers of meaning like sediment in a river. The Force itself seemed to pulse with anticipation as the time of fulfillment drew near. The prophecy had been discovered in the ruins of a world that no longer existed, its name lost to time. Archaeologists had uncovered stone tablets covered in hieroglyphs that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. These artifacts had been brought to Coruscant, where Jedi scholars had spent decades deciphering their meaning. The translation they arrived at was simple yet profound. A chosen one would come, born of the Force itself. This being would possess power beyond measure, the ability to touch the very fabric of reality. The Jedi Council had debated endlessly about what form this balance would take. Some believed it meant the destruction of the Sith, others a more literal equilibrium between light and dark. The marble floors of their chamber had absorbed countless hours of this philosophical debate. The multiple interpretations of the prophecy had divided the Jedi Order for generations. Some masters saw the Chosen One as a warrior who would vanquish the dark side entirely. Others envisioned a mediator who would somehow reconcile the opposing energies of the Force. A smaller, more radical faction believed balance meant the destruction of both Jedi and Sith. The very air in the Jedi Temple seemed to crackle with the tension of these competing ideas. Each interpretation carried profound implications for how the Order should prepare. Should they seek out this Chosen One, or wait for destiny to reveal them? The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the answer to unfold. How Anakin both fulfilled and twisted the prophecy becomes clear when examining his life's journey. The desert winds of Tatooine had whispered of his coming to those who knew how to listen. His birth, without father, seemed to fulfill the ancient texts perfectly. The midi-chlorian count that exceeded any Jedi's in recorded history confirmed his special nature. Yet his path to darkness, his fall to become Darth Vader, seemed to contradict the prophecy's promise. The very Force that had created him seemed to weep as he turned away from the light. The red lightsaber he wielded cast shadows that stretched across the galaxy like wounds. Each step he took toward darkness seemed to push balance further away. The possibility that Luke Skywalker was actually the true Chosen One cannot be dismissed. The twin sons of Tatooine had watched over his childhood, preparing him for a greater destiny. His refusal to kill his father, his rejection of the dark side, represented a choice Anakin could not make. The very air around Luke seemed to shimmer with the light of a new hope. His compassion, his willingness to see the good in Vader, suggested a deeper understanding of balance. The Force flowed through him not as a weapon, but as a tool for redemption. Each step he took toward his father was a step toward true equilibrium. The stars themselves seemed to align differently when Luke Skywalker walked among them. The theory that Rey was the true fulfillment of the prophecy adds another layer to this cosmic mystery. The desert sands of Jakku had preserved her like a secret waiting to be discovered. Her raw connection to the Force, untrained yet powerful, suggested a natural balance Anakin had never achieved. The very air around her seemed to vibrate with untapped potential. Her journey to understand her place in the galaxy mirrored the prophecy's journey toward understanding. The ancient texts spoke of balance, not dominance, and Rey embodied this principle. She drew power from both light and dark, yet belonged fully to neither. The Force itself seemed to breathe easier in her presence. The cyclical nature of the prophecy throughout galactic history suggests it may be eternal. The Jedi archives contained references to similar prophecies from different eras, different civilizations. Each cycle of galactic history seemed to produce its own Chosen One, its own attempt at balance. The very stars in the sky had witnessed this dance repeat countless times. Ancient temples on forgotten worlds contained carvings of figures who bore striking resemblances to those of the current age. The Force itself seemed to operate in great cycles, like the breathing of a sleeping giant. Each generation believed their time was special, their Chosen One unique. Yet the patterns of history suggested something far more profound at work. The role of balance in the Force and what it truly means remains the most mysterious aspect of the prophecy. The Jedi had long believed balance meant the elimination of the dark side. Yet the very nature of the Force suggested both light and dark were necessary components. Like day and night, like growth and decay, each had its place in the cosmic order. The air itself seemed to contain both elements, breathing in and out with eternal rhythm. True balance might not mean victory for one side over the other. Perhaps it meant understanding, acceptance, the wisdom to know when each was needed. The Force flowed through all things, not just those who served the light. The ancient temples where these prophecies were first recorded seemed to pulse with their own life. Stone walls that had stood for millennia absorbed the hopes and fears of countless generations. The very air in these sacred spaces felt different, charged with the weight of destiny. Visitors often reported hearing whispers in languages they could not understand. The crystals embedded in the temple structures seemed to hum with energy that responded to visitors' intentions. These were not merely buildings, but living repositories of galactic memory. The Force itself seemed to speak through the architecture, through the alignment of stones and stars. Each temple was a map of the prophecy, waiting to be read by those with eyes to see. The Jedi Order's interpretation of the prophecy had been shaped by their own biases and limitations. Their belief that balance meant the destruction of the Sith reflected their fear of the dark side. The very meditation chambers where they sought enlightenment had become echo chambers of their own assumptions. The ancient texts they studied contained warnings they chose to overlook. The Force itself tried to communicate with them, but they had forgotten how to listen. Their lightsabers, once symbols of peace, had become weapons of judgment. The crystals that powered these weapons had grown dim with their narrow vision. The prophecy had been before them all along, yet they could not see its true meaning. The Sith had their own interpretations of the Chosen One prophecy, darker and more twisted. Their ancient texts spoke of one who would bring balance through domination, not harmony. The very air in Sith temples seemed to crackle with malignant energy. Stone altars stained with the residue of dark rituals told of their corrupted understanding. They believed balance meant the subjugation of the light side to the dark. The Force, in their view, was meant to be controlled, not harmonized with. Each Sith Lord had sought to become the Chosen One in their own way. The red crystals of their lightsabers reflected this desire for power rather than balance. The truth about the prophecy might lie somewhere between these opposing interpretations. Perhaps balance was not about victory or defeat, but about understanding. The very nature of the Force suggested it contained both light and dark as essential components. Like the twin suns of Tatooine, both were necessary for life to flourish. The air that filled living lungs contained both oxygen and carbon dioxide in perfect proportion. Too much of either meant death, but together they sustained life. The Force might operate on similar principles, requiring both aspects to maintain cosmic health. The prophecy might be calling not for destruction, but for wisdom. The evidence supporting multiple Chosen Ones throughout history can be found in the Jedi archives. Ancient holocrons contained records of powerful Force users who had appeared at critical moments. Each had seemed to fulfill aspects of the prophecy, yet none had achieved lasting balance. The very crystals that stored these records seemed to pulse with frustrated energy. The Force itself appeared to be experimenting, trying different approaches across generations. Like a gardener trying different methods to cultivate a difficult plant, each attempt taught something new, brought the galaxy closer to true understanding. The prophecy might be less about a single individual and more about a process. The emotional weight of the prophecy on those who believed themselves to be the Chosen One cannot be overstated. Anakin had carried this burden like a physical weight on his shoulders. The very air around him had seemed to grow heavy with expectation. Each decision he made was shadowed by the question of whether it served his destiny. The fear of failure had driven him toward the very darkness he was meant to balance. Luke had felt this pressure too, though he had borne it more lightly. The desert winds of Tatooine had taught him patience, acceptance of forces beyond his control. Rey had approached the prophecy with curiosity rather than fear, seeking understanding rather than glory. The cyclical nature of galactic history suggests the prophecy may never be fully fulfilled. The stars themselves have witnessed this dance repeat countless times across millennia. Each civilization believes its time is unique, its challenges unprecedented. Yet the patterns of rise and fall of light and dark remain constant. The very fabric of space seems to breathe with this eternal rhythm. Nebulae form and dissipate like thoughts in the cosmic mind. Black holes consume and recycle matter in an endless cycle of creation and destruction. The force itself may operate on timescales far beyond mortal comprehension. The true meaning of balance might be found not in victory, but in acceptance. The Jedi had fought against the dark side, seeking to eliminate it entirely. Yet the very nature of the Force suggested both aspects were necessary. Like the twin suns of Tatooine, each had its place in the cosmic order. The air that filled living lungs contained elements that could both sustain and destroy. True balance might mean understanding when each aspect was needed. The prophecy could be calling not for a warrior but for a mediator. Someone who could walk between light and dark without being consumed by either. Yet as we contemplate the nature of prophecy, we must turn our attention to a mysterious figure who emerged from the shadows to challenge everything we thought we knew about the dark side. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, Snoke's true identity. From the unknown regions came a voice that would reshape the galaxy. But who was the man behind the mask? The shadows of uncharted space had concealed him for decades, perhaps centuries. His presence was felt before he was seen, like a cold wind that precedes a storm. The very fabric of the Force seemed to bend around his immense power. Supreme Leader Snoke emerged not as a conqueror, but as a whisper in the dark. His voice echoed through the minds of those sensitive to the Force, promising order in chaos. The galaxy had barely recovered from the Empire's fall when this new darkness began to rise. The stars themselves seemed to dim as his influence spread across the stars. The mystery of Snoke's origins has haunted scholars and Force users alike since his first appearance. The unknown regions, that vast expanse of unexplored space beyond the Outer Rim, held secrets older than the Republic itself. Ancient star maps showed these areas as blank spaces, as if the galaxy itself refused to reveal what lay within. The very air of these regions seemed different, charged with energies that defied conventional understanding. Some spoke of civilizations that had mastered both technology and the dark arts. Others whispered of experiments that had torn holes in the fabric of reality itself. The Force in these regions felt wild, untamed, and deeply corrupted. It was from this primordial darkness that Snoke emerged like a phantom from a nightmare. The physical appearance of Snoke told a story of immense suffering and dark power. His towering frame bore the scars of what appeared to be catastrophic injuries. The twisted, gnarled features suggested a body that had been broken and remade through dark rituals. His eyes, burning with unnatural intensity, seemed to pierce through flesh and bone to the soul beneath. The very air around him seemed to crackle with dark energy when he spoke. Each movement was deliberate, calculated, as if every gesture served a greater purpose. The robes he wore were not merely clothing but extensions of his dark presence. The throne room aboard his flagship felt less like a chamber and more like a temple dedicated to darkness. The major theories about Snoke's true identity have divided scholars and enthusiasts since his first appearance. Some believe him to be an ancient dark side user who had survived in hiding for millennia. Others suggest he was a creation, a puppet controlled by forces even more powerful than himself. The very nature of his power seemed too vast, too ancient to belong to a single being. The Force signatures that radiated from him felt like echoes of countless dark users across generations. Each theory carried its own evidence, its own compelling arguments. The truth remained elusive, hidden behind layers of deception and dark side manipulation. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the revelation of his true nature. The Darth Plagueis connection has emerged as one of the most compelling theories about Snoke's identity. Palpatine had spoken of his former master's ability to influence the midi-chlorians to create life. Plagueis had not truly died but had instead transformed himself through dark side rituals. The moon species to which Plagueis belonged were known for their longevity and connection to the Force. The very techniques that could create life could potentially sustain it beyond natural limits. The scars on Snoke's body could be the result of experiments to cheat death itself. The immense power he displayed matched descriptions of Plagueis's legendary abilities. The Force itself seemed to recoil from the possibility that such a being had survived. The evidence supporting the Plagueis theory can be found throughout the sequel trilogy for those who know where to look. Snoke's knowledge of ancient Sith techniques extended far beyond what should have been possible. His understanding of the bond between Kylo Ren and Rey suggested mastery over Force connections. The very way he manipulated events across the galaxy showed the patience of one who had witnessed centuries pass. The throne room aboard his flagship contained artifacts that predated the Empire by millennia. Each piece of dark side knowledge he possessed seemed to come from a different era of galactic history. The air in his presence felt thick with the weight of accumulated power and wisdom. The stars themselves seemed to dim when he reached out with the Force. The possibility that Snoke was merely a clone or puppet controlled by another entity cannot be dismissed. The technology to create artificial beings had existed in the galaxy for generations. The cloning facilities of Kamino had produced armies of identical soldiers. What if similar techniques had been used to create a vessel for dark side energy? The very nature of Snoke's power seemed to fluctuate, as if being channeled from an external source. His vulnerability to physical attack suggested a body that was not truly his own. The Force around him sometimes seemed to flow through him rather than from him. The galaxy might have been facing not one being, but a conduit for something far more ancient. The visual clues and symbolic elements in Snoke's design suggest connections to ancient dark side traditions. The golden robe he wore echoed the ceremonial garments of Sith acolytes from forgotten eras. The ring on his finger contained obsidian from the volcanic moon of Mustafar. Each element of his appearance seemed deliberately chosen to evoke specific dark side traditions. The throne room itself was designed to amplify his power, with every angle and surface serving a purpose. The Red Guards who stood watch were not merely protectors but extensions of his will. The very architecture of his flagship seemed to bend around his presence. The stars outside his viewport appeared to arrange themselves in patterns that spoke of ancient prophecies. The connection between Snoke and ancient darkside users extends beyond mere knowledge to actual lineage. The Force signatures that emanated from him contained echoes of Sith Lords long dead. Each gesture, each word seemed to carry the weight of generations of darkside practitioners. The very air in his presence felt charged with the accumulated power of millennia. His understanding of the bond between master and apprentice suggested personal experience with the rule of two. The way he manipulated Kylo Ren showed the wisdom of one who had trained countless apprentices. The scars on his body could be marks of initiation into dark side orders lost to time. The galaxy itself seemed to recognize in him a darkness that had existed since the dawn of civilization. The emotional weight of Snoke's influence on those around him cannot be overstated. Kylo Ren had been drawn to him like a moth to a flame, seeking the power he craved. The very air around the young Skywalker seemed to darken in Snoke's presence. Each word from the Supreme Leader was carefully calculated to manipulate and control. The fear he inspired in his followers was not just of death, but of something far worse. The promise of power he offered came at the cost of their very souls. The Force itself seemed to weep as he corrupted yet another promising apprentice. The stars that watched this drama unfold seemed to dim with each new victim. The mystery of Snoke's true purpose in the grand scheme of galactic events remains unresolved. His rise to power coincided too perfectly with the return of the Skywalker bloodline to prominence. The very timing of his emergence suggested orchestration by forces beyond mortal understanding. Each move he made seemed to serve a greater plan that spanned generations. The Force itself appeared to be responding to some ancient design when he acted. The destruction he caused was not random but carefully calculated to achieve specific ends. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and Snoke moved pieces with the patience of eternity. The stars themselves seemed to align according to his will. The evidence of Snoke's connection to the Skywalker bloodline is compelling when examined closely. His interest in Kylo Ren went beyond mere apprenticeship to something more personal. The very way he spoke of Darth Vader suggested a connection that transcended time. The air around him seemed to crackle with recognition when he faced the grandson of Anakin. Each manipulation of Kylo's emotions showed an intimate understanding of Skywalker's psychology. The scars that marked Snoke's body could be the result of encounters with Vader himself. The Force bonds he created between Kylo and Rey suggested knowledge of their shared destiny. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath when these connections were formed. The possibility that Snoke was created specifically to counter the return of the Skywalker bloodline cannot be ignored. The very timing of his emergence suggested a response to the awakening of the Force in Rey. The ancient prophecies spoke of balance, and perhaps Snoke was the counterweight to that balance. The air in the galaxy seemed to shift when these two powerful Force users emerged simultaneously. Each action Snoke took seemed designed to test and challenge the new generation of Skywalkers. The very fabric of the Force seemed to stretch under the pressure of their conflicting destinies. The stars that witnessed this drama seemed to burn brighter with anticipation. The galaxy itself had become the stage for a confrontation millennia in the making. The sensory details surrounding Snoke's presence revealed the depth of his dark power. The very air in his throne room seemed to grow cold when he entered. The sound of his voice echoed not just through chambers but through the minds of those who heard it. The scent of ozone and ancient dust followed him like a dark aura. The touch of his presence in the Force felt like ice water on the spine. The sight of his towering form against the backdrop of space created an image of darkness overwhelming light. The taste of fear was palpable in the mouths of those who stood before him. The very elements seemed to respond to his will, bending to serve his purposes. But Snoke's true identity may be connected to a lineage that stretches back generations, to a bloodline that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory: Rey's parents. In the desert wastes of Jakku, a child was left behind, her origins shrouded in mystery. The sandstorms howled around the AT-AT walker that became her home, whispering secrets to those who would listen. The twin suns beat down on the endless dunes, baking the surface into a landscape of forgotten dreams. Rey scavenged through the wreckage of empires, collecting pieces of a past she could not remember. The very air of Jakku seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her true story to emerge. Her hands, calloused from years of survival, reached for something more than just salvage. The force that flowed through her felt ancient, yet new, like a river that had changed course. The stars that watched over her lonely existence seemed to know something she did not. The journey of Rey from scavenger to Jedi apprentice carried the weight of countless questions. Each step she took toward her destiny raised more questions about where she had come from. The desert winds of Jakku had shaped her, but they had not created her. The very sand that filled her boots seemed to whisper of parents who had left her behind. The Force visions that haunted her dreams showed fragments of a past she could not piece together. The air around her sometimes seemed to crackle with the presence of those who had come before. Her connection to the Skywalker lightsaber suggested a deeper bond than mere chance. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her true identity to be revealed. The major theories about Rey's parentage have divided scholars and enthusiasts since her first appearance. Some believe she carries the blood of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the wise Jedi Master who watched over the Skywalker family. Others argue she is the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine, the dark side power who nearly consumed the galaxy. The possibility that she is a secret Skywalker, perhaps Luke's daughter, has captivated many imaginations. A smaller but compelling theory suggests she has no special lineage at all, but was chosen by the Force itself. The very air in the rooms where these debates occur seems to pulse with anticipation. Each theory carries its own evidence, its own compelling arguments. The truth remains elusive, hidden behind layers of mystery and deliberate misdirection. The evidence supporting the Kenobi theory can be found in the subtle details of Rey's character and abilities. Her accent mirrors that of Obi-Wan, suggesting a connection to the same region of space. fighting style she displays with her staff shows echoes of Kenobi's defensive techniques. The very way she moves in combat suggests training she should not have received. The Force visions that come to her often include the voice of Kenobi, guiding her from beyond. The air around her sometimes seems to carry the scent of desert herbs, reminiscent of Tatooine. Her natural ability to connect with others through the Force mirrors Kenobi's own empathetic nature. The very stars that watched over Kenobi's life seem to shine differently when Rey is near. The possibility that Rey is a Palpatine carries profound implications for the nature of the Force itself. The dark side power that flowed through the Emperor might have found a new vessel in his granddaughter. The very air around Rey sometimes seems to crackle with an energy that feels both light and dark. Her raw connection to the Force exceeds even that of Anakin Skywalker in his youth. The way she instinctively understands dark side techniques suggests exposure from an early age. The throne room aboard the second Death Star echoes in her Force visions, calling to something within her. The very fabric of the Force seems to bend around her presence in ways that defy normal explanation. The stars themselves seem to hold their breath when she reaches out with her power. The Skywalker theory carries the weight of destiny and prophecy that has defined the saga. The desert planet of Jakku mirrors Tatooine, suggesting a deliberate parallel in her origins. The very way the Skywalker lightsaber called to her across the galaxy suggests a blood connection. Her natural piloting abilities echo those of both Anakin and Luke Skywalker. The Force that flows through her seems to recognize the Skywalker blood as familiar territory. The air around her sometimes seems to hum with the same energy that surrounded the Chosen One. Her struggle with the dark side mirrors the internal conflicts that defined Anakin's journey. The very stars that witnessed the rise of the Skywalker line seem to welcome her as one of their own. The theory that Rey has no special lineage at all challenges the very foundation of Star Wars mythology. The idea that the Force could choose someone from humble origins carries profound philosophical weight. The very air in the galaxy seems to shift when considering that power does not require royal blood. Her connection to the Force might be a response to the darkness, not an inheritance from it. The sand of Jakku that formed her might be more important than any bloodline. The stars that watched over her lonely existence might have been preparing her for a greater purpose. The very nature of the Force might be more democratic than the Jedi or Sith ever believed. The galaxy itself might be moving beyond dynasties and towards something new. The symbolic implications of each parentage theory ripple through the entire narrative structure. If Rey is a Kenobi, it suggests the wisdom of the old Jedi will triumph over the Skywalker passion. The very air in the Jedi temples seems to breathe easier at this possibility. If she is a Palpatine, it represents the ultimate redemption of the dark side through love and choice. The stars that witnessed the Emperor's rise seem to dim at this thought. If she is a Skywalker, it continues the dynastic cycle that has defined the saga. The twin suns of Tatooine seem to burn brighter at this continuation of their legacy. If she is none of these, it opens the door to a new era beyond bloodline determinism. The very fabric of the Force seems to vibrate with the potential of this new beginning. How Rey's parentage affects the larger Star Wars story cannot be overstated. The very foundation of the saga might shift depending on her true origins. The balance between light and dark might be redefined by her presence. The air in the galaxy seems to hold its breath, waiting for this revelation. The prophecies that have guided the Jedi for millennia might find their fulfillment in her. The stars that have witnessed the eternal struggle might finally see its resolution. The very nature of the Force itself might be expanded by her unique connection. The future of the galaxy might hinge on understanding where she came from. The emotional weight of Rey's search for identity resonates with universal human experience. The very air around her seems to vibrate with the pain of abandonment and the hope of belonging. Each step she takes toward understanding her past is a step toward understanding herself. The sand of Jakku that filled her childhood now represents the questions that haunt her. The stars that watched over her lonely existence now seem to offer answers. The Force that flows through her seems to whisper of connections she cannot yet comprehend. The very fabric of her being seems to yearn for the truth of her origins. The galaxy itself seems to mirror her internal struggle for identity. The sensory details surrounding Rey's connection to her possible parents reveal deeper truths. The very air in her presence sometimes seems to carry the scent of different worlds. The sound of her voice echoes with accents from across the galaxy. The touch of the Force through her fingers feels like reaching through time itself. The sight of her standing against the backdrop of space creates an image of destiny in motion. The taste of hope is palpable when she considers the possibility of family. The very elements seem to respond to her emotional journey towards self-discovery. The stars that witness her quest seem to align in patterns that speak of ancient bloodlines. The narrative implications of Rey's parentage extend beyond mere plot points to thematic resonance. The very structure of the Star Wars saga might be redefined by her true origins. The air in the storytelling seems to shift when considering her place in the larger mythology. Each parentage theory offers a different lens through which to view the entire saga. The stars that have watched this story unfold seem to lean closer, waiting for the revelation. The very nature of heroism itself might be expanded by her unique journey. The balance between destiny and choice might find its ultimate expression in her story. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for this final piece of the puzzle. Yet Rey's connection to the Force may run deeper than any bloodline, suggesting that her true parentage lies not in who she came from, but in what she is destined to become. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, the Han shot first controversy. In a smoky cantina on Tatooine, a single shot would spark decades of debate among fans. The air hung thick with the scent of exotic spices and cheap liquor. Shadows danced across the walls as patrons from a dozen worlds shared whispered conversations. In this dimly lit corner of the galaxy, a moment of violence would become legendary. Han Solo, the smuggler with a heart of gold, faced a bounty hunter named Greedo. The tension between them crackled like electricity before a storm. The very air seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. This brief exchange would define a character and divide a fandom for generations. The cantina itself was a character in this drama, its walls bearing witness to countless confrontations. The worn wooden tables had absorbed the stories of smugglers, rebels, and Imperial agents. The strange music that filled the air seemed to pause at the crucial moment. Each patron in the background represented a different corner of the galaxy. The very architecture of the space suggested a place where anything could happen. The smoke that curled through the air created an atmosphere of mystery and danger. The shadows that clung to the corners held secrets that would never be told. This was not merely a setting, but a crucible where destinies were forged. The famous cantina scene appeared in different forms across various releases of the film. In the original 1977 version, Han Solo drew his blaster and fired without hesitation. The shot was quick, brutal, and definitive, ending Greedo's threat instantly. The sound of the blaster echoed through the cantina, silencing all other noise. Han's face showed no remorse, only the cold calculation of a survivor. The smoke from the blaster barrel mingled with the cantina's perpetual haze. This version presented Han as a man who lived by his own rules, a man who would shoot first to ensure his own survival. In later versions, the scene was altered to show Greedo firing first. The shot now came from the bounty hunter's blaster, missing Han by mere inches. Han's response appeared as self-defense rather than cold-blooded killing. The timing of the shots was changed, creating a different narrative entirely. The very nature of the confrontation shifted from aggression to reaction. The smoke from both blasters now filled the air, suggesting mutual hostility. Han's expression now seemed more justified, less morally ambiguous. The character's introduction to the audience had been fundamentally changed. The importance of this moment for Han Solo's character cannot be overstated. This was our first introduction to the man who would become a hero. The initial version showed us a smuggler who operated outside the law, a man who would kill to protect himself and his interests. The very essence of his character was established in this brief exchange. The cold efficiency of his actions spoke volumes about his past experiences. The audience immediately understood that this was not a typical hero. This was a complex character with moral ambiguities and rough edges. The development of Han Solo throughout the original trilogy depended heavily on this introduction. His journey from self-interested smuggler to selfless hero needed a starting point. The cold-blooded nature of the original scene provided that foundation. Each step of his character arc gained meaning from where he began. The very air around him seemed to change as he evolved throughout the story. The transformation from mercenary to rebel required a genuine starting point. The moral growth that defined his journey needed an authentic beginning. The character's redemption only had weight because of where he started. How the changes affect our understanding of Han's development reveals much about storytelling. The altered version presents a more traditionally heroic character from the start. The moral ambiguity that made Han unique was softened, made more palatable. The very fabric of his character arc was altered by this single change. The journey from darkness to light became less dramatic, less meaningful. The air of danger that surrounded him seemed to dissipate with this change. The complexity that made him fascinating was reduced to simplicity. The character's development lost some of its power and authenticity. The symbolic meaning of shooting first in the Star Wars universe extends beyond a single character. This moment represents the moral complexity that defined the original trilogy. The very nature of heroism was questioned and redefined through Han's action. The gray areas between good and evil were explored in this brief confrontation. The air of moral ambiguity that filled the cantina reflected the larger themes. The smoke that curled through the space suggested that nothing was black and white. The shadows that clung to the corners represented the complexities of morality. This moment encapsulated the sophisticated storytelling that made Star Wars special. The fan reaction to these changes has been passionate and enduring. The very air in convention halls seems to crackle with debate over this issue. The smoke from passionate discussions has filled countless rooms across decades. The shadows of disagreement have loomed over the fandom for generations. The sound of arguments both for and against the changes echoes through time. The very fabric of the Star Wars community has been shaped by this controversy. The taste of disappointment lingers in the mouths of those who prefer the original. The touch of nostalgia colors every discussion of this pivotal moment. The cultural impact of this single scene alteration extends far beyond the films themselves. The phrase "Han shot first" has become a rallying cry for originalists. The very air of popular culture references this moment regularly. The smoke from this controversy has spread throughout entertainment media. The shadows of this debate appear in discussions of artistic integrity. The sound of blaster fire now carries symbolic weight beyond the story. The very nature of film preservation and alteration is questioned here. The touch of this moment can be felt in countless other franchises and debates. George Lucas's reasoning for the changes reveals much about his artistic vision. The very air around his explanations seems to carry the weight of justification. The smoke from decades of reconsideration clouds the original intent. The shadows of parental responsibility and audience expectations loom large. The sound of his voice explaining these changes carries the tone of a creator's prerogative. The very fabric of his relationship with his creation is visible here. The taste of artistic compromise flavors every explanation offered. The touch of commercial considerations can be felt in these decisions. The technical aspects of the alteration demonstrate the power of modern filmmaking. The very air in the editing room must have been thick with creative tension. The smoke from digital effects tools filled the spaces where changes were made. The shadows of technological advancement loom over the original practical effects. The sound of blaster fire was carefully manipulated to create the new sequence. The very nature of film preservation was challenged by these alterations. The pixels that formed the new images represented a different era of storytelling. The touch of digital enhancement changed the texture of the original film. The philosophical implications of this change ripple through the entire Star Wars mythology. The very air in the galaxy far, far away seems different when viewed through this lens. The smoke from moral complexity has been replaced by clearer, simpler air. The shadows that once gave depth to characters have been lightened. The sound of blaster fire now carries less moral weight. The very fabric of what makes a hero has been subtly altered. The taste of moral ambiguity has been replaced by more palatable flavors. The touch of artistic revision has changed the texture of the entire saga. But this seemingly small change represents a larger pattern of alterations that have led some to question the very nature of the Star Wars saga itself. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, the Obi-Wan-Rey connection. The voice of a long-dead Jedi Master echoed through the mind of a scavenger girl, suggesting a connection beyond the grave. The desert winds of Jakku carried whispers that seemed to merge with memories of Tatooine. Rey stood on the edge of Ahch-To, the salt spray stinging her cheeks like tears. In her mind, she heard words not spoken in decades, words that resonated with her very bones. The air around her seemed to shimmer with the presence of one who had guided Luke Skywalker. The Force itself seemed to bend and weave between past and present. Each breath she took felt shared with a master who had sacrificed everything. The stars above seemed to align in patterns that spoke of ancient bloodlines. The theory that Obi-Wan Kenobi is Rey's grandfather has captivated fans with its elegant symmetry. The very notion that the wise mentor's legacy would continue through Rey feels right. The desert planet of Jakku mirrors Tatooine, suggesting a deliberate parallel in their origins. The scavenger's staff moves with the same defensive grace as Kenobi's lightsaber technique. The very air around Rey sometimes seems to carry the scent of desert herbs and wisdom. The Force visions that come to her often include the voice of Kenobi, guiding her steps. The stars that watched over Kenobi's exile seem to shine differently when Rey is near. The galaxy itself seems to recognize a continuation of his legacy in her presence. Evidence from the film supporting this connection appears in subtle details throughout the sequel trilogy. Rey's accent mirrors that of Obi-Wan, suggesting she may have spent formative years near Tatooine. The very cadence of her speech carries echoes of the Jedi Master's measured tones. The fighting style she demonstrates with her staff shows defensive maneuvers reminiscent of Kenobi's Soresu form. The air around her seems to crackle with the same calm determination that defined his approach to combat. Her instinctive understanding of Jedi philosophy suggests exposure from an early age. The very way she holds herself in battle reflects the discipline Kenobi embodied. The Force that flows through her seems to recognize his teachings as familiar territory. The significance of Rey's accent cannot be overlooked in this compelling theory. The very sound of her voice carries the musical lilt of the Outer Rim territories. The desert winds that shaped her speech patterns seem to whisper of Tatooine's influence. Each word she speaks seems to carry the weight of generations past. The air around her sometimes seems to vibrate with the resonance of Kenobi's voice. The very cadence of her questions to Luke mirrors the curiosity Kenobi once showed. The stars that heard Kenobi's wisdom seem to echo in her tone. The galaxy itself seems to recognize the familiar sound of his legacy in her speech. Rey's fighting style reveals deeper connections to the Kenobi lineage than mere coincidence. The very way she wields her staff demonstrates a defensive mastery she should not possess. The air around her seems to move with the same efficiency Kenobi employed in battle. Each defensive maneuver she performs mirrors techniques he perfected over decades. The very stance she takes before combat reflects the discipline of Jedi training. The Force that guides her movements seems to follow patterns he established. The stars that witnessed Kenobi's duels seem to recognize similar grace in her actions. The galaxy itself seems to breathe easier when she fights with such controlled precision. The vision Rey experiences in the cave on Ahch-To provides compelling evidence for this theory. The very air in the cave seems to crackle with the presence of multiple generations. The reflections she sees in the mirrors suggest connections beyond the Skywalker line. Each image that appears carries echoes of Kenobi's wisdom and sacrifice. The very walls of the cave seem to whisper secrets of her true heritage. The Force visions that come to her often include the voice of Kenobi, guiding her steps. The stars that shine through the cave entrance seem to align in Kenobi's constellation. The galaxy itself seems to reveal its secrets through this powerful vision. The narrative symmetry between Kenobi and Skywalker legacies adds profound meaning to this theory. The very air in the galaxy seems to balance between these two powerful bloodlines. The desert planets that shaped both families suggest a deliberate parallel in their stories. Each generation seems to produce a balance between passion and wisdom. The very fabric of the Force seems to weave these two lines together. The stars that witnessed their separate journeys seem to converge in Rey's destiny. The galaxy itself seems to seek harmony between these contrasting legacies. The balance between Skywalker emotion and Kenobi wisdom finds perfect expression in her. The balance between Skywalker emotion and Kenobi wisdom finds perfect expression in her. The implications for Rey's true purpose in the galaxy become clearer through this lens. The very air around her seems to vibrate with the weight of dual legacies. Each step she takes toward understanding her past reveals greater responsibilities. The Force that flows through her seems to carry the wisdom of both bloodlines. The very stars that watch her journey seem to align in new patterns. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for her to fulfill this combined destiny. The balance between light and dark may find its ultimate expression through her. The very nature of the Force seems to expand to accommodate her unique heritage. The emotional weight of this connection resonates with Rey's search for belonging. The very air in her presence seems to carry the comfort of ancestral wisdom. Each revelation about her possible connection to Kenobi brings her closer to peace. The Force visions that come to her now include the warmth of family she never knew. The very stars that witnessed Kenobi's loneliness seem to offer her companionship. The galaxy itself seems to embrace her as the continuation of his legacy. The desert winds that shaped her now seem to carry the scent of belonging. The very fabric of her being seems to settle into the knowledge of her heritage. The sensory details surrounding this connection reveal deeper truths about Rey's nature. The very air around her sometimes seems to carry the scent of old books and wisdom. The sound of her voice echoes with the calm authority of a Jedi Master. The touch of the Force through her fingers feels like reaching across generations. The sight of her standing against the backdrop of space creates an image of legacy fulfilled. The taste of hope is palpable when she considers her connection to Kenobi. The very elements seem to respond to her growing understanding of her heritage. The stars that witness her journey seem to burn brighter with recognition. The narrative possibilities this connection opens extend beyond mere plot points. The very structure of the Star Wars saga seems to find new meaning through this revelation. The air in the storytelling seems to shift when considering her place in the larger mythology. Each generation's story gains new depth when viewed through this lens. The stars that have watched this epic unfold seem to lean closer in approval. The very nature of legacy and inheritance finds perfect expression here. The balance between destiny and choice seems to resolve in her character. The galaxy itself seems to breathe easier with this understanding. Yet if Rey is indeed a Kenobi, then her destiny may be intertwined with another legacy, one that stretches back to the very beginning of the Jedi Order. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory: Darth Vader's ghost influence. Even after death, the Dark Lord of the Sith continued to shape the galaxy from beyond the grave. The ashes of Darth Vader's funeral pyre scattered across Endor's forest moon, carried by winds that seemed to whisper his name. The very air around the bonfire crackled with an energy that defied explanation. Luke Skywalker watched as his father's body transformed into light, yet something remained. The Force itself seemed to hesitate, as if reluctant to let go of such a powerful presence. The stars that witnessed this moment appeared to dim, then brighten with renewed intensity. The forest around the pyre grew silent, as if holding its breath for what would come next. The galaxy held its breath, unaware that Vader's influence had only begun to manifest. The evidence of Vader's presence in the original trilogy appears in moments that transcend mere coincidence. Luke's journey to Dagobah was guided by more than just the Force. The very air in the swamp seemed to carry the weight of paternal concern. Each step Luke took toward his destiny felt nudged by a presence he could not name. The dark side cave that tested him seemed to resonate with Vader's signature. The very ground beneath his feet seemed to pulse with dark energy. The shadows that clung to the trees seemed to move with purpose. The Force itself seemed to whisper that only Luke could hear. The possibility that Vader guided Luke through his darkest hours suggests a complex duality. The very nature of their bond transcended the physical limitations of life and death. The air around Luke sometimes seemed to carry the scent of mechanical breathing. Each vision he experienced contained echoes of his father's wisdom. The very fabric of the Force seemed to weave between light and dark. The stars that watched over Luke's journey seemed to align in Vader's constellation. The galaxy itself seemed to recognize the ongoing connection between father and son. The balance between Anakin's redemption and Vader's legacy found expression in these moments. Leia's connection to her father through the Force reveals another dimension of this influence. The very air around her sometimes seemed to carry the weight of unspoken conversations. Each decision she made as a leader seemed guided by an unseen hand. The very stars that witnessed her rise seemed to shine with Vader's approval. The Force that flowed through her seemed to recognize the blood they shared. The very fabric of her destiny seemed intertwined with her father's legacy. The galaxy itself seemed to acknowledge the complex nature of their relationship. The balance between her hatred and understanding found resolution through this connection. The connection to Kylo Ren's obsession with his grandfather reveals the enduring power of Vader's influence. The very air around Kylo seemed to crackle with dark energy. Each step he took toward darkness seemed guided by an unseen mentor. The very helmet he revered seemed to pulse with Vader's presence. The stars that witnessed his fall seemed to align with Vader's will. The Force itself seemed to bend to the connection between grandfather and grandson. The very fabric of Kylo's destiny seemed woven from Vader's legacy. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, watching this dark inheritance unfold. The symbolic battle between Anakin and Vader within the Force represents the ultimate internal conflict. The very air in the afterlife seems charged with their eternal struggle. Each moment of influence in the physical realm reflects this cosmic battle. The very stars that witnessed their lives seem to shine with the light of their conflict. The Force itself seems to be the battlefield where light and dark wage war. The very fabric of reality seems to stretch under the pressure of their duality. The galaxy itself seems to reflect their internal struggle in its own conflicts. The balance between redemption and corruption finds expression in this eternal battle. How this theory changes our understanding of redemption cannot be overstated. The very nature of Anakin's sacrifice takes on new meaning through this lens. The air around his death seemed to carry the promise of continued influence. Each moment of guidance offered to his children suggests redemption was not complete. The very stars that witnessed his return to the light seemed to acknowledge his ongoing work. The Force itself seems to allow for a more complex understanding of salvation. The very fabric of morality seems to stretch to accommodate this possibility. The galaxy itself seems to recognize that redemption may be a process, not an event. The sensory details surrounding Vader's ghostly presence reveal the depth of this connection. The very air in his children's presence sometimes seems to grow cold. The sound of mechanical breathing echoes in moments of quiet contemplation. The touch of the Force through their fingers feels like a familiar, dark presence. The sight of shadows moving independently creates an image of ongoing influence. The taste of fear and hope mingles when they feel their father's guidance. The very elements seem to respond to the duality of his nature. The stars that witness these moments seem to burn with the light of his internal conflict. The emotional weight of this influence resonates through generations of Skywalkers. The very air around the family seems to carry the weight of their shared legacy. Each generation feels the pull of Vader's presence in their own way. The very fabric of their destiny seems woven from his choices. The stars that watch over them seem to recognize the pattern of influence. The Force itself seems to acknowledge the ongoing impact of his life and death. The very nature of their connection to the Force reflects his complex journey. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the final resolution of this legacy. The narrative implications of this theory extend beyond mere ghost stories to profound questions about identity. The very air in the galaxy seems charged with the possibility of continued existence. Each moment of influence suggests that death may not be the end of impact. The very stars that witness these events seem to acknowledge the persistence of consciousness. The Force itself seems to allow for connections that transcend physical limitation. The very fabric of reality seems more malleable than previously understood. The galaxy itself seems to recognize that influence can continue beyond death. The balance between life and death seems more fluid through this understanding. The philosophical questions raised by this theory challenge our understanding of the Force itself. The very air in the universe seems to vibrate with the possibility of eternal influence. Each act of guidance from beyond suggests a deeper connection to the cosmic energy. The very nature of the Force seems to accommodate both light and dark influences. The stars that have witnessed this saga seem to acknowledge its complexity. The very fabric of existence seems more interconnected than previously imagined. The galaxy itself seems to breathe with the rhythm of these eternal connections. The balance between individual will and cosmic influence finds expression here. But Vader's influence may extend beyond the grave in ways we never imagined, reaching across time and space to touch events yet to come. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, the Yoda Sith theory. The wisest Jedi Master may have been hiding the darkest secret of all. The ancient Jedi temple on Coruscant echoed with the footsteps of one who had guided the Order for centuries. Yoda's small frame moved through the marble halls with unnatural grace. The very air around him seemed to vibrate with power that defied his size. His green skin and wrinkled appearance suggested wisdom and age. Yet what if this exterior concealed the most dangerous deception in galactic history? The Force itself seemed to bend around his presence in ways that defied explanation. Each word he spoke carried weight that could shape destinies. The storm clouds that gathered over Coruscant during the prequel era mirrored the turmoil within the Jedi Order. Rain lashed against the temple windows as Yoda meditated on the growing darkness. The very air in his chambers seemed to crackle with unseen energy. His eyes, usually warm and wise, sometimes reflected a cold calculation. The ancient texts he studied contained knowledge that went far beyond typical Jedi teachings. Each meditation session seemed to draw power from sources the Jedi would consider forbidden. The very foundations of the temple seemed to respond to his presence. The stars that watched over the city planet seemed to dim when he reached out with the Force. Evidence from Yoda's actions throughout the saga suggests a pattern of manipulation that cannot be ignored. His guidance of Anakin Skywalker seemed designed to push the young Jedi toward darkness. The very words he chose to speak to Anakin carried subtle undertones of doubt. Each warning he issued seemed to create the very fear he claimed to prevent. The air around their conversations seemed to grow thick with manipulation. His apparent failure to sense Palpatine's true nature stretches credibility. The very Force itself should have revealed such darkness to one so powerful. Yet Yoda remained silent, allowing the Sith Lord to rise unchallenged. His knowledge of the dark side extended far beyond what a Jedi Master should possess. The very techniques he demonstrated in combat mirrored those of Sith Lords. Each lightsaber duel he fought showed a familiarity with dark side tactics. The air around his green blade seemed to crackle with energy that felt both light and dark. His understanding of Force lightning and other dark abilities was too intimate. The very way he moved in battle suggested experience with forbidden powers. Each demonstration of his power revealed knowledge that should have been unattainable. The stars that witnessed his combat seemed to recognize something unnatural in his skill. The possibility that Yoda manipulated both sides of the conflict becomes more compelling with each examination. The very air in the Senate chamber seemed to respond to his presence during crucial votes. Each political move he made seemed to serve a larger, hidden purpose. The war between the Republic and Separatists appeared to benefit his position. The very fabric of galactic politics seemed to bend around his influence. His apparent opposition to Palpatine may have been an elaborate deception. The very nature of their conflict seemed orchestrated for maximum effect. Each confrontation between them carried the weight of a carefully choreographed dance. The symbolic meaning of Yoda's green lightsaber takes on new significance through this lens. The very color green represents balance in some ancient Force traditions. Each crystal that powered his blade seemed to pulse with dual energy. The air around his lightsaber seemed to vibrate with both light and dark frequencies. The very construction of his weapon suggested mastery of both aspects of the Force. His species, shrouded in mystery, may have been chosen for its deceptive appearance. The very nature of his small size served as perfect camouflage for immense power. Each aspect of his physical form seemed designed to conceal his true nature. The implications for the entire Jedi philosophy are staggering. When viewed through this theory, the very foundations of Jedi teaching may have been corrupted from within. Each lesson Yoda taught to younglings carried hidden meanings. The air in the training chambers seemed to absorb his dark influence. The very code he espoused may have been designed to create weakness. His emphasis on emotionlessness may have been meant to create vulnerability. Each meditation technique he taught could have been a pathway to darkness. The very Force he claimed to serve may have been serving him instead. The evidence from the prequel trilogy becomes undeniable when examined closely. The very timing of Yoda's departure from Coruscant seemed too convenient. Each decision he made during the Clone Wars served to weaken the Jedi Order. The air around the temple seemed to grow darker with his continued presence. His apparent failure to prevent Order 66 suggests complicity rather than incompetence. The very Force should have warned him of the coming purge, yet Yoda escaped, while thousands of other Jedi perished. Each survivor of the purge seemed to serve his hidden agenda. The sensory details surrounding Yoda's presence reveal the depth of his deception. The very air in his presence sometimes seemed to grow unnaturally cold. The sound of his voice, while usually calm, sometimes carried undertones of darkness. The touch of his presence in the Force felt like ice water on the spine. The sight of his small form against the backdrop of power created an image of perfect deception. The taste of fear was palpable in the mouths of those who questioned his wisdom. The very elements seemed to respond to his will in ways that defied natural law. The stars that witnessed his actions seemed to burn with the light of his deception. The emotional weight of this theory resonates through the entire Star Wars narrative. The very air in the galaxy seems to change when considering Yoda's true nature. Each moment of guidance he offered takes on new, darker meaning. The very fabric of the saga seems to unravel and reweave through this lens. The stars that have watched this story unfold seem to dim with revelation. The Force itself seems to recoil from the possibility of such betrayal. The very nature of good and evil in the galaxy becomes more complex. Each character's journey gains new depth when viewed through this understanding. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend beyond mere plot twists. The very structure of the Star Wars saga seems to find new meaning. Each generation's story gains new layers of manipulation and deception. The stars that witness this epic seem to align in patterns of betrayal. The very nature of the Force seems more complex and dangerous. Each moment of apparent wisdom becomes a moment of calculated deception. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the final revelation. Yet if Yoda was indeed a Sith, then the fall of the Jedi Order was not a tragedy, but rather the culmination of a plan centuries in the making. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory, Mace Windu's survival. In the lightning-filled chambers of the Chancellor's office, a Jedi Master fell. But did he truly die? The air crackled with dark energy as Palpatine unleashed his full power. Mace Windu's purple lightsaber deflected bolt after bolt of Force lightning. The very walls of the office seemed to groan under the pressure of this confrontation. Anakin Skywalker watched from the doorway, his face torn between loyalty and duty. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the Chancellor's chambers. Each flash of lightning illuminated the determination in Windu's eyes. The Force itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the outcome. The moment of Windu's apparent death has been debated by scholars and fans for generations. The window shattered under the combined force of Palpatine's lightning and Anakin's betrayal. Windu's body seemed to tumble into the endless Coruscant night. The very air seemed to absorb his scream as he fell. Yet no body was ever recovered from the depths below. The storm that raged outside provided perfect cover for any escape. The darkness of the night seemed to reach up and claim the fallen Jedi. The galaxy itself seemed to mourn the loss of such a powerful warrior. Evidence from the film suggests that Windu's survival is not only possible but plausible. The very nature of his unique fighting style, the pod, gave him control over his inner darkness. Each movement in this form channeled the opponent's aggression back against them. The air around Windu during combat seemed to vibrate with controlled power. His ability to walk the edge between light and dark made him uniquely resistant to Palpatine's influence. The very force that flowed through him seemed to bend to his will. Each lightsaber technique he mastered represented a step toward perfect balance. The purple blade itself symbolized this unique connection to both aspects of the Force. The expanded universe contains numerous references to Windu's possible survival. Ancient texts speak of Jedi who could survive falls that would kill ordinary beings. The very air in the lower levels of Coruscant could have cushioned his descent. Each level of the city planet provided potential handholds and escape routes. The storm drains and maintenance shafts offered perfect hiding places. The very architecture of Coruscant seemed designed to allow for such escapes. Each passing speeder could have provided an opportunity for rescue. The darkness of the Undercity offered sanctuary from Imperial eyes. Windu's unique connection to the Force through Vapad cannot be overstated in this theory. The very nature of this fighting form allowed him to convert darkness into power. Each lightning bolt from Palpatine could have been absorbed rather than deflected. The air around his hands seemed to crackle with contained energy. His mastery over this form gave him control over forces few Jedi could comprehend. The very fabric of the Force seemed to respond to his unique approach. Each meditation session deepened his connection to this dangerous technique. The balance he maintained represented the pinnacle of Jedi achievement. The possibility of his return in future stories sends ripples through the timeline. The very air in the galaxy seems to shift when considering his potential reappearance. Each generation of Force users could benefit from his wisdom and experience. The very stars that witnessed his fall seem to await his return. The Force itself seems to hold a place for this unique Jedi Master. Each new threat to the galaxy could find him ready to answer the call. The very nature of his survival suggests a greater purpose at work. The balance between light and dark might find its champion in his return. The symbolic meaning of his purple lightsaber takes on new significance through this lens. The very color purple represents the perfect balance between red and blue. Each crystal that powered his blade seemed to pulse with dual energy. The air around his lightsaber seemed to vibrate with both light and dark frequencies. His unique weapon symbolized the balance he maintained within himself. The very construction of the blade suggested mastery over both aspects of the Force. Each swing of the purple blade represented perfect harmony. The stars that witnessed his combat seemed to recognize the power of balance. How his survival would change the Star Wars narrative cannot be overstated. The very air in the storytelling seems to change when considering his continued presence. Each moment of galactic history gains new depth with his secret survival. The very fabric of the saga seems to expand to accommodate this possibility. The stars that have watched this story unfold seem to lean closer in anticipation. The Force itself seems to acknowledge the impact of his continued existence. Each character's journey gains new meaning with his potential return. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for this revelation. The sensory details surrounding his supposed death reveal clues to his survival. The very air in the Chancellor's office seemed charged with more than just lightning. The sound of shattering glass could have masked a controlled descent. The touch of the Force through his fingers might have guided his fall. The sight of his body disappearing into the storm created perfect misdirection. The taste of ozone from the lightning could have covered his escape too. The very elements seemed to conspire to aid his survival. The stars that witnessed this moment seemed to shine with the light of possibility. The emotional weight of Windu's survival resonates through the entire saga. The very air in the galaxy seems to vibrate with the potential of his return. Each generation of Jedi Masters feels the absence of his unique wisdom. The very force that flows through all things seems to miss his presence. The stars that guided the Jedi Order seem to dim without his light. Each new threat to the galaxy feels the absence of his power. The very balance between light and dark seems unstable without his influence. The galaxy itself seems to yearn for the return of this legendary warrior. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend far beyond mere survival. The very air in the storytelling seems charged with new potential. Each era of galactic history could be enriched by his hidden presence. The very fabric of the Force seems to accommodate his continued journey. The stars that have witnessed the entire saga seem to align in new patterns. Each character's destiny might be altered by his secret survival. The very nature of Jedi philosophy might evolve through his experiences. The galaxy itself seems to hold endless stories waiting to be told. But Windu's survival may be connected to a larger network of Jedi who escaped Order 66, waiting in the shadows for the right moment to return. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory: midichlorians as parasites. The microscopic beings that connect living things to the Force may not be benevolent symbiotes, but rather something far more sinister. The very air in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant seemed to vibrate with unseen life. Each breath taken by the Jedi Masters contained countless microscopic organisms. The blood that flowed through their veins carried these tiny passengers to every cell. The very force they believed they wielded might have been controlling them instead. Each meditation session seemed to strengthen the connection between host and parasite. The air in the training chambers grew thick with the presence of these microscopic beings. The very foundations of Jedi wisdom might have been built on a terrible misunderstanding. The re-examination of the prequel trilogy's explanation of the Force reveals unsettling patterns. The very moment Qui-Gon Jinn explained midichlorians to Anakin seemed innocent enough. Each word he spoke about these microscopic lifeforms carried the weight of Jedi doctrine. The air around young Anakin seemed to crackle with an unusually high concentration of these beings. The very blood test that revealed his extraordinary count might have been measuring infection rather than potential. Each cell in his body contained more of these organisms than any Jedi had ever seen. The very nature of his connection to the Force might have been a symptom rather than a gift. The stars that witnessed this moment seemed to dim with the weight of this revelation. The implications for Jedi and Sith alike are staggering when viewed through this lens. The very air in the Jedi Council chambers seemed to absorb their collective delusion. Each decision they made, based on midichlorian counts, might have been manipulated. The very Force they believed served the light might have been using them for its own purposes. Each lightsaber they constructed seemed to channel power through these microscopic intermediaries. The very crystals that focused their energy might have been amplifying parasitic influence. Each meditation technique they practiced might have strengthened their host's control. The very foundations of their philosophy might have been a carefully constructed lie. How this theory changes our understanding of Force abilities cannot be overstated. The very air around a Force user seems to vibrate with the activity of these microscopic beings. Each demonstration of telekinesis might represent the parasites manipulating matter through their host. The very precognitive visions Jedi experience could be implanted by these organisms. Each moment of heightened awareness might be the parasite scanning the environment for survival. The very healing abilities attributed to the Force might be the parasites preserving their hosts. Each connection to other living things might be the parasites communicating across their network. The very nature of what we call the Force might be the collective will of these microscopic beings. The possibility that midichlorians manipulate their hosts suggests a terrifying new reality. The very air in the galaxy seems charged with the presence of these invisible puppet masters. Each choice made by Force-sensitive individuals might be influenced by microscopic passengers. The very conflicts between Jedi and Sith could be wars between different strains of parasites. Each lightsaber duel might represent competing colonies fighting for dominance. The very prophecy of the Chosen One might have been manufactured by these organisms. Each generation of Force users might be carefully bred for optimal host conditions. The very balance between light and dark might be a carefully maintained equilibrium for parasite survival. The connection to the larger themes of control and free will becomes profoundly disturbing. The very air in the Senate chamber seemed to whisper of invisible influences. Each political decision that affected Force-sensitive populations might have been orchestrated. The very rise and fall of galactic empires could follow patterns beneficial to these parasites. Each war that ravaged the galaxy might have served to strengthen certain bloodlines. The very peace treaties that ended conflicts might have been designed to preserve host populations. Each moment of galactic history might be part of a larger parasitic agenda. The very stars that witnessed these events might be observing a cosmic infection. The evidence from the film supports this theory. When examined through this new lens, the very air around Palpatine seemed to crackle with an unusually intense midichlorian presence. Each manipulation of Anakin might have been facilitated by the parasites in his blood. The very transformation into Darth Vader could represent a complete parasitic takeover. Each moment of Vader's cruelty might be the parasites expressing their true nature. The very redemption at the end might represent the parasites changing strategies. Each generation of Skywalkers seems to carry higher concentrations of these organisms. The very family line might have been specifically bred for optimal parasitic hosts. The sensory details surrounding midichlorian presence reveal their true nature. The very air in a room with multiple Force users seems to vibrate with microscopic activity. The sound of their collective presence might be a low hum, just below normal hearing. The touch of their influence might feel like static electricity on the skin. The sight of their effect might be visible as subtle distortions in the air. The taste of their presence might be metallic, like blood on the tongue. The very elements seem to respond to their collective will. The stars themselves might be affected by their cosmic influence. The emotional impact of this theory reshapes our understanding of the entire saga. The very air in the storytelling seems to change when considering this possibility. Each moment of triumph for the Jedi might be a victory for their parasites. The very fall of the Sith might represent a strategic retreat rather than defeat. Each character's journey gains new, darker meaning through this lens. The very nature of heroism and villainy becomes blurred and complex. Each choice made by beloved characters might not have been truly their own. The very fabric of the narrative seems to unravel and reweave with this revelation. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend to the very nature of life itself. The very air in the universe seems charged with the possibility of widespread infection. Each living being might carry these microscopic passengers to some degree. The very evolution of life in the galaxy might have been guided by these parasites. Each species that developed Force sensitivity might have been selectively bred. The very diversity of life might serve different parasitic needs and preferences. Each moment of galactic history might be part of an invisible parasitic agenda. The very stars that witness this might be observers to a cosmic horror. The philosophical questions raised by this theory challenge our understanding of consciousness. The very air of existence seems to vibrate with the question of who truly controls our actions. Each thought we have might be influenced by microscopic passengers in our blood. The very nature of free will might be an illusion carefully maintained by our parasites. Each moment of inspiration might be a parasitic suggestion rather than genuine creativity. The very connections we feel to others might be parasites communicating through their network. Each emotion we experience might be manufactured to serve parasitic needs. The very essence of what makes us human might be a carefully constructed facade. But if midichlorians are indeed parasites, then the very nature of the Force itself may be called into question, leading us to wonder what truly lies beyond the veil of the physical world. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory: Force ghosts revealed. The glowing figures who guide from beyond may not be what they appear to be. The ethereal light that surrounded Obi-Wan Kenobi after his death seemed almost too perfect. The very air on Dagobah grew thick with an otherworldly presence when Yoda faded away. Each appearance of these luminous beings carried an aura of wisdom and peace. The blue-tinted figures that appeared to Luke Skywalker offered guidance and comfort. The very nature of their existence suggested a reward for a life of service. Yet what if this beautiful facade concealed something far more disturbing? The stars that witnessed these manifestations seemed to dim with hidden knowledge. The examination of Force ghost appearances throughout the saga reveals unsettling patterns. The very first appearance of Obi-Wan's spirit came at a moment of Luke's greatest need. Each subsequent manifestation seemed carefully timed to influence critical decisions. The air around these ghostly figures seemed to vibrate with controlled energy. Their words, while comforting, always served a specific purpose in the larger narrative. The very timing of their appearances suggested manipulation rather than genuine concern. Each interaction with the living world seemed to drain something from their luminous forms. The very nature of their continued existence might depend on their influence over the living. The possibility that Force ghosts are actually trapped souls presents a terrifying alternative. The very air in the afterlife might be a prison rather than a paradise. Each glowing figure could be a consciousness unable to truly move on. The blue light that surrounds them might be the bars of their cosmic cage. Their guidance of living Jedi might represent attempts to find replacements or companions. The very wisdom they offer could be designed to create more beings like themselves. Each moment of their continued existence might be a form of eternal punishment. The stars that watch over them might weep for their endless cycle of influence. The connection to the world between worlds opens even more disturbing possibilities. The very air in this realm between time and space might be filled with lost souls. Each Force ghost might exist in this liminal space, neither fully alive nor truly dead. The pathways between moments in time could be their only means of interaction. Their appearances to the living might represent brief crossings through these temporal doorways. The very nature of their existence might be dependent on maintaining these connections. Each moment they spend guiding others might be a moment they avoid true dissolution. The fabric of reality itself might be weakened by their continued presence. The implications for Jedi philosophy challenge the very foundation of their beliefs. The very air in the Jedi Temple seemed to absorb teachings about the afterlife. Each meditation on becoming one with the Force might have been based on a lie. The comfort they offered dying Jedi about continuing their service might be hollow. The very concept of eternal reward through Force ghosthood might be a trap. Each Jedi who achieved this state might have condemned themselves to endless influence. The very peace they sought might be replaced by eternal responsibility. The stars that witnessed their passing might recognize the tragedy of their fate. How this theory changes our understanding of immortality cannot be overstated. The very air in the galaxy seems charged with the presence of these spectral beings. Each moment of their continued existence challenges our understanding of death. The very nature of what we call immortality might be a form of eternal servitude. Their guidance, while helpful, might come at the cost of their own freedom. The very wisdom they impart might be designed to ensure others follow their path. Each interaction with the living world might be a desperate attempt to remain relevant. The very force that binds all things might be using them as instruments. The sensory details surrounding Force ghost encounters reveal their true nature. The very air around their manifestation seems unnaturally cold. The sound of their voices often carries an echo, as if speaking from great distance. The touch of their presence feels like static electricity rather than warmth. The sight of their glowing forms sometimes reveals faces etched with subtle pain. The taste of ozone often accompanies their appearances, suggesting energy discharge. The very elements seem to react to their presence with unnatural stillness. The stars that witness these moments seem to burn with a colder light. The emotional weight of this theory resonates through every Force Ghost encounter. The very air in the storytelling seems to change when considering this possibility. Each moment of comfort offered by these spectral guides takes on new meaning. The very nature of their wisdom seems tainted by desperation and need. Each appearance to grieving loved ones might be motivated by loneliness rather than love. The very guidance they provide might be designed to create more companions in their spectral realm. Each moment of their continued existence might represent a failure to truly let go. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, questioning the nature of these visits. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend to the very nature of the Force. The very air in the universe seems charged with the question of what lies beyond death. Each Force-sensitive being who dies might face this same spectral fate. The very choice between becoming one with the Force and remaining as a ghost might be illusory. Each moment of influence these ghosts exert might be a moment they avoid true dissolution. The very balance between light and dark might be maintained by these spectral intermediaries. Each generation of Jedi might be guided by the same trapped souls. The stars that witness this cycle might recognize it as a form of cosmic tragedy. The evidence from the film supports this unsettling interpretation when examined closely. The very air around Yoda's death seemed to carry more than just peace. Each word he spoke to Luke about passing into the Force seemed carefully chosen. The very timing of Obi-Wan's appearances always coincided with moments of crisis. Each manifestation of Anakin's ghost at the end seemed almost reluctant. The very nature of their continued presence suggested obligation rather than reward. Each interaction with the living world seemed to drain their luminous energy. The very Force that sustained them might be using them as tools. The philosophical implications challenge our understanding of consciousness itself. The very air of existence seems to vibrate with the question of what defines true death. Each moment of these ghosts' continued existence might be a form of undeath. The very nature of their consciousness might be fragmented or incomplete. Each interaction with the living world might be an attempt to maintain their identity. The very wisdom they offer might be a collection of memories rather than genuine insight. Each moment of their spectral existence might be a struggle against dissolution. The stars that witness this might recognize it as a cosmic form of suffering. Yet the true nature of Force ghosts may be connected to a realm beyond normal space and time, a place where the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory. The Empire's greatest weapon may have been designed to fail from the very beginning. The cold metal of the Death Star's construction bays echoed with the footsteps of countless workers. The very air in those massive chambers seemed charged with the weight of galactic domination. Each weld, each circuit installation, each system calibration carried the potential for hidden weakness. The Imperial engineers who oversaw the project moved with military precision. Their crisp uniforms and stern faces suggested absolute confidence in their creation. Yet beneath this facade of invincibility lurked questions that would haunt the Empire. The stars that watched over the construction seemed to dim with foreboding. The sheer scale of the Death Star defied comprehension, stretching across space like a mechanical moon. The very air around its massive frame seemed to vibrate with contained power. Each turbolaser battery represented the Empire's ability to destroy entire worlds. The very design spoke of absolute control over life and death. Yet within this technological marvel lay flaws that seemed almost deliberate. The thermal exhaust port that would become its Achilles heel was inexplicably exposed. Each design review that should have caught this vulnerability somehow missed it. The very engineers who prided themselves on perfection overlooked this critical weakness. Evidence from the films about the Death Star's construction and vulnerabilities raises troubling questions. The very blueprints that Grand Moff Tarkin reviewed contained the fatal flaw. Each technical specification that passed Imperial scrutiny somehow approved the design. The very military minds that planned the station's defenses ignored the obvious weakness. The air in the briefing rooms where these plans were discussed seemed thick with overconfidence. Each presentation of the Death Star's capabilities emphasized its strengths while minimizing potential risks. The very culture of fear within the Empire prevented anyone from questioning the design. The stars that witnessed these planning sessions seemed to hold their breath in disbelief. The possibility that rebel sympathizers sabotaged the project from within cannot be dismissed. The very construction crews that assembled the Death Star included countless individuals. Each worker had the opportunity to introduce subtle flaws into critical systems. The very nature of such a massive project made perfect quality control impossible. The air in the construction bays seemed to whisper of quiet resistance. Each moment of unsupervised work offered chances for deliberate mistakes. The very complexity of the station's systems provided perfect cover for sabotage. The stars that watched over the construction seemed to shine with hidden approval. The connection to larger themes of hubris and overconfidence becomes undeniable through this lens. The very air in Imperial command centers seemed charged with arrogance. Each declaration of the Death Star's invincibility revealed the Empire's blindness. The very belief in their technological superiority made them vulnerable. The psychological atmosphere aboard the station reeked of complacency. Each security protocol that seemed adequate was actually insufficient. The very mindset that built the Death Star contained the seeds of its destruction. The stars that witnessed this arrogance seemed to dim with disapproval. The implications for Imperial military strategy suggest a fundamental flaw in their approach. The very air in war rooms across the galaxy seemed thick with overconfidence. Each battle plan that relied on technological superiority ignored human factors. The very belief that bigger weapons guaranteed victory proved their undoing. The Imperial mindset that valued fear over creativity left them vulnerable. Each tactical decision that seemed brilliant contained hidden weaknesses. The very structure of their military command prevented adaptive thinking. The stars that observed their strategies seemed to recognize the pattern of failure. The symbolic meaning of the thermal exhaust port takes on profound significance. The very air around this small opening seemed to hum with destiny. Each ray shaft that led directly to the reactor core represented a fatal vulnerability. The very design that seemed perfect contained the seed of its own destruction. The exhaust port became a metaphor for the Empire's inherent weaknesses. Each proton torpedo that found its mark represented the triumph of hope over tyranny. The very smallness of the target contrasted with the massive scale of the station. The stars that witnessed this shot seemed to align in celebration. The sensory details surrounding the Death Star's final moments revealed deeper truths. The very air in the trench run seemed charged with destiny and danger. Each sound of TIE fighter engines echoed with the desperation of the Empire. The very sight of the exhaust port approaching represented hope against impossible odds. The touch of the trigger under Luke's fingers seemed guided by fate itself. Each moment of the final approach seemed to stretch into eternity. The very explosion that followed liberated countless worlds from fear. The stars that witnessed this moment seemed to burn brighter with freedom. The emotional weight of this theory resonates through the entire saga. The very air in the galaxy seems to change when considering this possibility. Each Imperial victory might have been part of a larger design. The very nature of their technological pride contained the seeds of their downfall. Each moment of rebel success might have been orchestrated by hidden hands. The very balance between control and freedom seems more complex than imagined. Each character's journey gains new meaning through this understanding. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, questioning the nature of its conflicts. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend far beyond mere military strategy. The very air in the storytelling seems charged with new potential. Each era of galactic history might be seen through this lens of manipulation. The very fabric of the saga seems to expand with this understanding. Each conflict between empire and rebellion might serve a hidden purpose. The very nature of power and control might be more complex than appears. Each moment of victory and defeat might be part of a larger pattern. The stars that have witnessed this entire saga seem to align in new configurations. The evidence from various sources creates a compelling case for deliberate weakness. The very design documents that survived the Empire's fall contain inexplicable oversights. Each engineering report that should have flagged the thermal port somehow missed it. The very chain of command that approved the design had suspicious gaps in oversight. The air in the meetings where these decisions were made seemed unusually tense. Each participant who could have questioned the design remained silent. The very culture of the Imperial military prevented critical thinking. The stars that observed these processes seemed to recognize the pattern of complicity. But if the Death Star was indeed designed to fail, then we must question whether the entire galactic civil war was orchestrated by forces beyond our comprehension. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory. The galaxy's greatest hero may have walked a path far darker than anyone suspected. The salt air of Ahch-To carried whispers of secrets buried beneath ancient stones. Each wave that crashed against the rocky shores seemed to echo with untold stories. The very air around the island temple felt heavy with the weight of hidden knowledge. Luke Skywalker's exile appeared to be a retreat from failure. But what if it was something more? The very ground beneath his feet seemed to absorb the darkness he carried within. Each storm that lashed the island mirrored the turmoil in his soul. The stars that watched over his solitude seemed to dim with unspoken truths. The evidence from his actions and emotional states suggests a journey beyond the light. The very air around Luke seemed to change after his confrontation with Vader. Each decision he made in the following years carried shadows of doubt. The very confidence that defined him seemed replaced by something more complex. His eyes, once bright with hope, now reflected depths of painful understanding. The very force that flowed through him seemed to carry both light and dark currents. Each meditation session seemed to explore forbidden knowledge rather than seek peace. The very nature of his connection to the Force had transformed. The possibility that Luke secretly served the Emperor after Endor cannot be dismissed. The very air in the throne room aboard the second Death Star seemed to linger with dark energy. Each moment Luke spent with Palpatine might have planted seeds of corruption. The very temptation he resisted might have found root in his subconscious. The years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens remain unexplored. Each journey he took during this time could have led him down dark paths. The very knowledge he gained might have come from forbidden sources. The stars that witnessed his travels might have seen a different Luke than history records. The connection to his exile on Ahch-To reveals deeper layers of this theory. The very air on the island seemed charged with ancient dark side energy. Each stone in the Jedi Temple ruins seemed to whisper of forgotten power. The very isolation he chose might have been to protect others from himself. The ancient texts he studied contained knowledge the Jedi Order had banned. Each page he turned might have revealed truths too dangerous to share. The very decision to cut himself off from the Force might have been self-punishment. The storms that constantly battered the island mirrored his internal conflict. The implications for his relationship with Ben Solo become profoundly disturbing. The very air around their final confrontation seemed thick with dark energy. Each moment Luke spent considering killing his nephew suggested deeper darkness. The very instinct that rose within him might have been more than just a fleeting thought. His knowledge of Ben's potential might have come from personal experience. The very fear he felt might have been recognition of his own darkness reflected. Each step he took toward his lightsaber might have been guided by dark side influence. The very betrayal that followed might have been a consequence of his hidden corruption. How this theory changes our understanding of his character cannot be overstated. The very air in the galaxy seems to shift when considering this possibility. Each moment of his apparent heroism might have been a struggle against inner darkness. The very hope he represented might have been tempered by personal knowledge of evil. His wisdom in exile might have come from exploring both sides of the Force. The very guidance he offered Rey might have been colored by his own experiences. Each word he spoke about the dark side might have carried the weight of personal knowledge. The very legacy he left might be more complex than history records. The sensory details surrounding Luke's dark side journey reveal its depth. The very air around him sometimes seemed to grow unnaturally cold. The sound of his breathing often carried an edge of barely controlled emotion. The touch of the Force through his hands sometimes felt like crackling energy. The sight of his eyes occasionally revealed flashes of yellow beneath the blue. The taste of regret was palpable in his words about the past. The very elements seemed to respond to his internal struggle. The stars that witnessed his journey seemed to burn with conflicted light. The emotional weight of this theory resonates through the entire sequel trilogy. The very air in the storytelling seems charged with unspoken darkness. Each moment of Luke's reluctance to help Rey gains new meaning. The very weight of his knowledge seems to come from personal experience. His final confrontation with Kylo Ren takes on deeper significance. The very sacrifice he makes might be both redemption and punishment. Each appearance as a Force ghost seems to carry echoes of his struggle. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, questioning his true nature. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend to the very nature of redemption. The very air in the universe seems charged with the question of what defines a hero. Each journey through darkness might be necessary to truly understand the light. The very balance between good and evil might require personal exploration. Each character's fall might be part of a larger pattern of understanding. The very nature of the Force might require experiencing both extremes. Each moment of weakness might ultimately lead to greater strength. The stars that witness these journeys might recognize the necessity of darkness. Yet Luke's journey into darkness may have been necessary to prepare him for a final confrontation that would determine the fate of the galaxy itself. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory. The princess, who became a general, held powers she never fully explored. The very air around Leia Organa seemed to vibrate with untapped potential. Each breath she took carried the weight of a Skywalker legacy she barely understood. The Force flowed through her veins like a river seeking its ocean. Her presence in a room often caused subtle shifts in the atmosphere. The very stars seemed to lean closer when she spoke of hope and rebellion. Each decision she made as a leader resonated with instincts beyond mere strategy. The galaxy itself seemed to recognize the power she kept hidden. The evidence from the films about her connection to the Force appears in moments of crisis. The very air on the Death Star seemed to respond when she sensed Luke's presence. Each word she spoke to him across the void carried more than just sound. The very fabric of space seemed to bend to her desperate need for connection. Her survival in the vacuum of space defied all scientific explanation. The very Force that surrounded her seemed to form a protective bubble. Each moment of her resilience in captivity suggested deeper abilities. The very nature of her survival hinted at powers she couldn't name. The possibility that Leia received secret training opens intriguing narrative possibilities. The very air in hidden rooms across the galaxy might have witnessed her instruction. Each session with a surviving Jedi could have shaped her hidden potential. The very nights she claimed to be working late might have been spent in meditation. Her knowledge of Jedi philosophy seemed deeper than her occasional comments suggested. The very way she moved in combat reflected training she never mentioned. Each instinctive use of the Force might have been the result of careful practice. The very secrecy surrounding her abilities suggested a deliberate choice. The connection to her role as a leader and strategist reveals the depth of her power. The very air in Rebel command centers seemed charged with her intuitive understanding. Each battle plan she devised carried insights that bordered on precognition. The very way she inspired troops suggested a Force connection beyond mere charisma. Her ability to sense danger before it struck saved countless lives. The very atmosphere around her seemed to ripple with protective energy. Each moment of crisis found her perfectly positioned to respond. The very nature of her leadership hinted at abilities she kept concealed. The implications for the Skywalker bloodline become more profound through this lens. The very air around the family seemed to vibrate with inherited power. Each generation of Skywalkers carried the Force in unique ways. The very balance between light and dark found expression in Leia's hidden strength. Her connection to both her father's darkness and her brother's light created perfect equilibrium. The very nature of her power represented the true potential of their bloodline. Each moment she resisted the dark side showed greater strength than her father. The very stars that witnessed their family saga seemed to recognize her unique role. How this theory changes our understanding of her character cannot be overstated. The very air in the storytelling seems charged with new potential. Each moment of her apparent vulnerability takes on new meaning. The very choice to focus on politics rather than Jedi training becomes more significant. Her strength in the face of torture reveals deeper reserves of power. The very nature of her resistance to Vader's mind probe suggests Force abilities. Each decision she made might have been guided by instincts she couldn't explain. The very fabric of her character seems woven with threads of hidden power. The sensory details surrounding Leia's Force presence reveal its true nature. The very air around her sometimes seemed to shimmer with invisible energy. The sound of her voice often carried undertones that affected those who heard it. The touch of her presence could calm the most turbulent emotions. The sight of her standing against overwhelming odds created an aura of power. The taste of hope was palpable when she spoke of the rebellion's future. The very elements seemed to respond to her emotional state. The stars that witnessed her journey seemed to burn with her inner light. The emotional weight of this theory resonates through her entire story. The very air in the galaxy seems to change when considering her full potential. Each moment of her leadership gains new depth through this understanding. The very nature of her sacrifice for the rebellion takes on greater meaning. Her relationship with Han and Luke might have been influenced by her hidden abilities. The very choices she made about her children could have been guided by Force insight. Each moment of her struggle against the Empire might have been empowered by untapped power. The galaxy itself seems to recognize the greater story that remained untold. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend to the very nature of the Force. The very air in the universe seems charged with the question of what defines strength. Each character's journey through the Force might take unique forms. The very balance between light and dark might manifest in unexpected ways. Each generation of Force users might discover new aspects of their connection. The very nature of Jedi training might be too restrictive for true potential. Each moment of Leia's natural ability might represent the Force's purest expression. The stars that witness this might recognize the evolution of understanding. The evidence from various sources creates a compelling case for her hidden power. The very air in the Senate chamber seemed to respond to her presence. Each political victory she achieved might have been aided by Force influence. The very way she inspired loyalty suggested abilities beyond normal charisma. Her survival through countless dangers hinted at supernatural protection. The very instincts that guided her decisions seemed almost precognitive. Each moment of connection with her brother across distances proved their bond. The very fabric of her destiny seemed woven with threads of the Force, but Leia's true potential may have been deliberately suppressed, suggesting that someone or something was preventing her from achieving her full power as a Force user. Let's move on to the next Star Wars theory. Beyond the Jedi and Sith exists an ancient order that may hold the true secrets of the Force. The very air in the oldest parts of the galaxy seems to whisper of beings who predate recorded history. Each star that burns in the night sky might be a witness to their ancient presence. The Force itself seems to flow through channels established by these mysterious entities. Their influence permeates every aspect of galactic existence, yet remains unseen. The very fabric of reality might be woven according to their design. Each civilization that rises and falls could be following patterns they established. The stars themselves seem to align in configurations that speak of their influence. The theory about the wills and their connection to the Force challenges everything we thought we knew. The very air around ancient temples seems to vibrate with their residual energy. Each stone carving that depicts these beings shows them as observers rather than participants. The very nature of their existence suggests they exist outside normal time and space. Their connection to the Force appears to be more fundamental than that of any Jedi or Sith. Each meditation that reaches deep enough might brush against their consciousness. The very essence of what we call the Force might be their creation or their tool. The stars that have witnessed their presence seem to burn with ancient wisdom. George Lucas's original concept for the Star Wars saga centered around these mysterious beings. The very air in the early script pages seemed charged with their presence. Each frame of the original storyboards contained hints of their influence. The very title Star Wars might have been meant to document their conflicts. Their role as cosmic observers positioned them as the ultimate narrators. Each character's journey might have been part of their larger design. The very structure of the trilogy might have been meant to serve their purposes. The stars that watched over the creation of this saga seemed to recognize their hand. The possibility that the wills manipulate events from behind the scenes is both terrifying and profound. The very air in key moments of galactic history seems charged with their presence. Each major conflict might have been orchestrated to serve their inscrutable goals. The very rise and fall of empires could be part of their cosmic experiment. Their influence might extend to the smallest details of individual lives. Each choice made by heroes and villains might be guided by their unseen hands. The very balance between light and dark might be maintained according to their design. The stars that witness these events might be their instruments of observation. The connection to the Journal of the Wills adds another layer to this cosmic mystery. The very air around ancient texts seems to shimmer with contained knowledge. Each page of the journal might contain truths too profound for mortal minds. The very act of recording galactic events might serve their purposes. Their chronicling of history might be more than mere documentation. Each entry in the journal might be a subtle manipulation of future events. The very preservation of knowledge might be a tool for their continued influence. The stars that have witnessed the writing of these texts seem to guard their secrets. The implications for our understanding of the Force are staggering when viewed through this lens. The very air in the galaxy seems charged with the presence of higher powers. Each use of the Force by Jedi and Sith might be borrowing their energy. The very nature of what we call the light and dark sides might be artificial distinctions. Their true understanding of the Force might transcend such simple dichotomies. Each moment of connection to the Force might be a moment of connection to the very essence of life itself, might be their creation or their experiment. The stars that witness this cosmic dance might be their audience. How this theory changes the entire Star Wars narrative cannot be overstated. The very air in the storytelling seems charged with new meaning. Each character's journey gains new significance as part of their larger design. The very conflicts between good and evil might be serving purposes beyond comprehension. Their manipulation of events might explain the seemingly coincidental nature of many plot points. Each moment of destiny and prophecy might be their orchestration. The very fabric of the saga seems to expand to accommodate their presence. The stars that have witnessed this entire story seem to align in recognition. The sensory details surrounding the wills reveal their profound otherness. The very air in their presence seems to bend around them. The sound of their communication might be beyond normal hearing. The touch of their influence might feel like the flow of time itself. The sight of their true form might be incomprehensible to mortal eyes. The taste of their presence might be like the essence of the universe. The very elements seem to respond to their will as if they were extensions of their being. The stars that witness their actions seem to burn with their reflected power. The emotional weight of this theory resonates through the entire saga. The very air in the galaxy seems to change when considering their presence. Each moment of triumph and tragedy gains new meaning through this understanding. The very nature of free will might be an illusion they maintain. Their observation of galactic events might be the ultimate form of entertainment. Each character's struggle might be part of a game they play across millennia. The very meaning of existence might be defined by their purposes. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, questioning its place in their design. The narrative possibilities this theory opens extend to the very nature of storytelling itself. The very air in the universe seems charged with the question of who truly writes history. Each moment of narrative might be part of their larger chronicle. The very act of telling the Star Wars story might serve their purposes. Their influence might extend beyond the fictional universe into our own reality. Each person who experiences the saga might be part of their experiment. The very boundaries between fiction and reality might be more permeable than imagined. The stars that witness our engagement with this story might be their instruments. The evidence from various sources creates a compelling case for their existence. The very air around ancient artifacts seems to carry their signature. Each civilization that has risen and fallen might have left traces of their influence. The very patterns of history seem too consistent to be mere coincidence. Their presence might be felt in moments of profound connection to the Force. Each prophecy that comes true might be their fulfillment. The very structure of the universe might reflect their design. The stars that have witnessed all of history might be their creation. Yet, the Whills may be connected to an even larger mystery, one that suggests the entire Star Wars saga is not what it appears to be. In the end, all the theories may connect in ways we never imagined, revealing a truth that spans the entire saga. The very air in the galaxy seems to vibrate with the possibility of ultimate understanding. Each theory we've explored might represent a single thread in a vast cosmic tapestry. The fabric of reality itself might be woven from these interconnected possibilities. The stars that have witnessed the entire saga seem to align in patterns of revelation. Each moment of mystery and speculation might be leading toward a single, profound truth. The very nature of the Force might be far more complex than any single theory can capture. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath, awaiting the final revelation. The synthesis of all major theories suggests a web of influence that defies simple explanation. The very air around key moments in galactic history seems charged with multiple layers of meaning. Each character's journey might be influenced by forces both seen and unseen. The very choices that seemed individual might be part of a larger cosmic design. The Whills might observe from beyond, while midichlorians manipulate from within. Each Force ghost might be both a guide and a prisoner of their spectral existence. The very balance between light and dark might be maintained by countless interconnected systems. The stars that watch over this complexity seem to burn with the light of understanding. The possibility that everything is connected transforms our understanding of the entire saga. The very air in the universe seems charged with the energy of these connections. Each event, no matter how small, might ripple across the fabric of space and time. The very destinies of individuals might be threads in a much larger tapestry. The rise and fall of empires might follow patterns established long before recorded history. Each prophecy might be both accurate and incomplete, revealing only fragments of truth. The very nature of the Force might be the ultimate expression of this cosmic interconnectedness. The stars that witness these connections seem to pulse with the rhythm of the universe. The role of fate versus free will in the Star Wars universe becomes profoundly complex through this lens. The very air around moments of choice seems thick with the weight of destiny. Each decision made by heroes and villains might be both freely chosen and predetermined. The very nature of their consciousness might exist within a framework of cosmic design. Their struggles might represent the eternal tension between individual will and universal purpose. Each moment of triumph or tragedy might serve multiple levels of meaning simultaneously. The very fabric of their reality might allow for both freedom and fate to coexist. The stars that observe these choices seem to shine with the light of paradox. The cyclical nature of the galactic conflict suggests patterns that repeat across generations. The very air in each era of the galaxy seems to carry echoes of previous conflicts. Each rise of darkness might be followed by an inevitable return of light. The very structure of time itself might be circular rather than linear. The conflicts between Jedi and Sith might represent eternal cosmic principles. Each generation might face similar challenges, testing different approaches to universal questions. The very nature of their struggles might be necessary for the continued evolution of consciousness. The stars that witness these cycles seem to burn with the patience of eternity. The possibility that the entire saga is part of a larger plan challenges our understanding of storytelling itself. The very air in the narrative seems charged with the presence of unseen authors. Each character's journey might be carefully orchestrated to serve cosmic purposes. The very structure of their stories might contain hidden layers of meaning. Their triumphs and tragedies might be necessary components of a universal design. Each moment of revelation might be both an ending and a beginning. The very nature of their existence might be part of an experiment in consciousness. The stars that observe this grand design seem to align in patterns of intention. The implications for future Star Wars stories become both limitless and constrained. The very air in potential futures seems charged with infinite possibility. Each new chapter might reveal deeper layers of the cosmic mystery. The very nature of storytelling might evolve to accommodate these expanding truths. The characters yet to come might find themselves playing roles in an eternal drama. Each new revelation might both answer questions and create deeper mysteries. The very fabric of the Star Wars universe might continue to expand with each new telling. The stars that witness these ongoing stories seem to welcome each new voice. The sensory details of this ultimate revelation create a tapestry of cosmic understanding. The very air in the galaxy seems to shimmer with the energy of connection. The sound of the Force itself might be heard as the harmony of countless interconnected systems. The touch of this understanding might feel like the warmth of universal recognition. The sight of the stars might reveal patterns that tell the entire story at once. The taste of this truth might be both sweet and bitter, containing all possibilities. The very elements seem to resonate with the frequency of ultimate comprehension. The stars that witness this moment seem to burn with the light of completion. The emotional weight of this unifying theory resonates through every moment of the saga. The very air in the storytelling seems charged with the energy of resolution. Each character's journey gains new significance as part of the larger design. The very nature of their struggles becomes meaningful in the context of universal purpose. Their moments of doubt and triumph might represent the eternal human experience. Each connection between characters might reflect the fundamental interconnectedness of all things. The very fabric of their reality might be a mirror for our own existence. The galaxy itself seems to breathe with the rhythm of this understanding. The narrative possibilities this final truth opens extend beyond the boundaries of fiction. The very air in our world seems to vibrate with the echoes of these cosmic truths. Each person who experiences the Star Wars saga might recognize something fundamental. The very nature of storytelling might be a way for the universe to understand itself. Their struggles might reflect our own search for meaning and engine. Each moment of inspiration the story provides might be a glimpse of universal truth. The very act of engaging with this narrative might be part of the larger design. The stars that witness our experience might be the same ones that watch their story. The evidence throughout the saga points toward this ultimate interconnectedness. The very air in key moments seems charged with the presence of multiple layers of meaning. Each character's Force sensitivity might represent their connection to this larger web. The very prophecies that guide their actions might be fragments of cosmic awareness. Their moments of intuition might be brushes against the fabric of universal design. Each coincidence that serves the plot might be evidence of deeper patterns at work. The very nature of their reality might be more malleable and interconnected than appears. The stars that witness these patterns seem to confirm their existence. And in the quiet expanse of space, the Force continues its eternal dance, waiting for the next chapter in a story that will never truly end.